Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Hash Church episode 128. I'm not going to lie, we did have a few technical difficulties today. It seems as though the link that we originally started with was corrupt and it would not raise past 99%. So give me a second while I send out these links and we get our people invited into the room. And welcome, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday. What do you say, Todd?
I'm glad it's working.
Wipe the sweat off.
What's up, Johnny B?
Hi, looking at the beautiful snowstorm outside.
All right. Very good. Very good. Welcome, hemp guy. Oh, mute your mic if you're going to move your camera around, Johnny B. It's very loud. Thanks, brother. Thank you, thank you. Well, that was a little nerve-wracking, I'm not going to lie. I was having some difficulties. I couldn't get it to load past 99. I got my backup. I got Todd, who's always got my back. He's like, don't worry, I got this. It wouldn't go past 99 for him either. So I guess it was a bit of a glitch in the app. And so here we are. Skunkman Sam, Johnny B, Todd McCormick, all in the house. None of us in Barcelona. Sad times. Sad times. I have so many people.
Ay, caramba, you mean I'm not in Barcelona?
No, you're not in Barcelona. You are in, geez, I don't know where you are. Where are you right now? Are you in Mexico?
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. Of course you're in Amsterdam. Well, we almost made it. It was a close one. Geez, we almost got there.
And did you do something about the hotel reservations?
No, it's a weekend, so there's nothing I can do until Monday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we'll sort that out for sure. We'll get it all sorted out.
Because I talked to them and they told me that it's on your credit card, and if I want to check in and bill everything to the room, it's fine with them.
Yes, well, you know what's funny? If you actually went there, they would say that nothing has been put on the credit card and it was just a hold. They always say that you've paid with your credit card and then you get there and you're like, go to get into your room and they're like, we need your credit card. I'm like, well, I already paid with my credit card. No, that was just a hold. Now we need to run your credit card. I'm like, all right, whatever. Either way, we're not going to be there. Sad times. Etienne, how are you, my friend, in Barcelona?
I was just at headquarters and they just told me the news. So I was just like, oh, shit. Really?
Mark, he called me crying. He called me literally in tears crying. I couldn't believe it.
Bummer.
Oh.
What's this? I jump into Hash Church, the bad news right off the bat? What's wrong?
Yeah, apparently Marcus isn't coming to Barcelona.
Whoa. Shit.
Nope, not in the position to make that happen right now, unfortunately. But hey, next year, there's always next year. In the meantime, I'm going to blow smoke towards the Vatican with some full melt dry sift that I cleaned up the other day on a nice, clean sapphire. How nice is a clean sapphire?
Better than titanium.
Hey, I'd like to.
That was almost all four of you guys talking at the same time. That was awesome.
Everybody, all at the same time. Ready?
Okay, yeah, we're gonna talk.
Hey, I'd like to dedicate this to my my dad who passed away this week. This is to Joe Smith. So,
Joe Smith, you are in our thoughts. Gone but never forgotten. Gone but never forgotten. Oh, I should turn my D-nail on so I can have a rip. That'll be helpful. That'll be helpful. Turn that shit up.
No, mine's only 450, so two of us did it.
Yeah, I can't believe how many people were upset about missing the Barcelona trip. It was a real bummer. There's a large group of good people there. And definitely definitely going to be, sorry guys, I just got to mute you. There you go. While you cough, your face is off. Definitely going to miss everyone. You know, it's one of those times a year that we really get to see everyone with the Cannabis Cup, sort of no more in Amsterdam. Barcelona was really the big one where we got to see, you know, our European family as well as people from maybe some other countries that that's one of the one stops they sort of make on this, not really making the North American events. So it's always nice to get out to Barcelona. I definitely look forward to getting back there next year, and also enjoying everyone's social media and hearing about the Masters Cup. Of course, Lorenzo, Nerd Creations rocking that event. And with all the best clubs, really, La Colada, HQ, We Flowers, those are the top three right there.
I was just with Lorenzo not 20 minutes ago, right before I got here. He sends his hello.
Nice.
Say hello.
He's the one who told me that you weren't coming. I'm like, no, you're bullshitting me. And that's when I hit you up, and just how it goes. But yeah, look, man, it looks to be very, very nice. They look to be getting things going here. Cannabis posters all over the place here in Barcelona. So, hey, Skunk Man, I hope. Are you still coming? Will I get to see you?
No. Tony and Marcus and I were flying in together, and they canceled. So did I.
It was a full cancel.
Solo it is.
Solo it is. Well, you'll have a great time. There's some great people there, and I know the Sasquatch crew is going to come out. You should definitely link up with Matt and Joel and those guys. Real good fun over there.
I was looking forward to seeing you, and now I won't. But Ryan said he'll be down there for 1 or 2 nights.
Cool. I'll look for him.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think my D-nail is appropriately heated up for a rip now. If anyone wants to join me, I'll be over here with the mothership, ripping it up.
Are there any, have you heard about any events happening with Franco, with a little celebration of his life or anything? I mean, he was the one guy that didn't matter that he was in competition with so many of the other vendors and such, but everybody loved him. I don't know of anybody who didn't like Franco.
I got in last night, and my first place stop was HQ. So really got nothing that I have heard thus far. The only thing I heard was the thing, potentially Legends, where we're going to attempt to honor him, but yeah, that's changed. So I have no idea. If anybody does, please hit me up, text me up. I'm on Instagram, ATN420, the letters ATN420. And yeah, I want to give a shout out actually to D-Nail. I'm using their EU unit, which is working like a charm out here.
They finally got an EU unit?
Yep, I'm rolling with 220 1.2, and I'm using my motherfucker. This is my motherfucker glass. This is Toph and D-Rec.
Nice. Oh, nice, dude. Yeah, that looks great.
Yeah, it says motherfucker across the.
I always used Dabinator when I went to Europe, just because it was so easy to plug in all I did was plug in the European plug and it worked. That's awesome.
Didn't we burn out a few D-nails in the beginning? I think we did in Amsterdam.
Well, I did for sure.
Oh, I was there.
I not only burned it out, I was just power in the Sensi apartments.
What's that?
I was waiting to give some to Alan Dronkers, and I got all the way there. I got up there with the D-nail. He was sitting at the table. I set everything up. I pulled out the shatter. I got everything ready. I turned it on, and the D-nail got super red. Yeah. And then the power went off everywhere. Yeah. And I actually had a moment where I was going to actually do the dab because I didn't want to waste the heat of the nail. But I had this moment where I felt like Alan's going to think I turned into some type of pot crackhead, and I don't want that to happen. So I just watched the thing go cold, and I just sat there, and I was like, how do we turn the power back on?
Yeah, and did you blow just the whip, or did you actually burn out the D-nail as well? Because often it's just the whip that will burn out immediately from the.
I got D-nail, and they sent me a whip, and it wasn't the whip. The actual D-nail was burned out. And
see, I got luckier. I have a video on my Bubble Man's World where I roll up. I'm in Amsterdam. It's at the Krasnopolski at my hotel suite, and I'm talking. I'm like, all right, everybody, and I turn it on, and you see me kind of preparing, and then you see me go over to the D-nail and go, what the fuck? You kind of hear me go, what? No. And then I'm just like, right, I kept it all on camera because I thought, man, I have to show people this. This is just too fucking heartbreaking. So I pooched the D-nail. I'm sitting there like fucking almost crying. And then I'm like, maybe it's just the whip. And I brought an extra whip. And then I remembered, right? It's like, I got to call down and get this converter, which literally weighs 30 pounds. It's like this giant fucking magnet that I was carrying around with me, if you guys remember, in a suitcase with my D-nail and everything. I'd carry this.
Us too. Remember me and AT both had them.
Oh, yeah, dude.
I had one. Yeah, last time we were here, I had one.
We all
of those.
carried them around.
I had to pay extra in my luggage because it weighed, practically the 50-pound limit was the damn converter box itself. But
right. So you can imagine from my perspective, for 3+ years carrying that box around back and forth to the Cannabis Cup, and then Dabinator coming out with the unit. This was the first unit he gave me with my logo blasted onto it. He gives me this unit and I'm like, well, what do I have to do? He says, just plug in the European plug. I'm like, come on, that's it? Like I can use a Canadian plug in Canada and a European plug in Europe and that's it? It's all being done inside the box? He's like, yes. So that was it. I was forever sold on Dabinator as my travel unit because I don't want to have to carry special things. I don't want to have something that only...
The other thing that's nice about a Dabinator is it works with 12 volt.
Yeah, that's exactly my main, the final point that Sam just made, which really sort of took it over for me. I can use my Dabinator with my little portable battery, and the D-nail pulls so much power, I can't even get it to heat up on a portable battery. Like
I can say I left my Dabinator on for the last 1.5 to 2 years, and
nice.
Big shout out to Dabinator. It's reliable.
Yeah, shout out to Maximilian for sure. I actually came down today, and my D-nail was just sitting on. It was like I was cleaning it overnight and I forgot, and I came down and it was like at 1,000 degrees, glowing red. Clean that fucking thing beautifully, though. I'll tell you that much.
Now the question is, like myself, how many dabs have you done off 1,000-degree D-nail? Because I did one the other day.
Johnny B, you're the king of 1,000-degree D-nail, so I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, hold
dude.
on. Damn, I'm cleaning that thing. Man, it's
say no to glowies.
Yeah, a little hit right there. Just if you want a big hit, turn the heel to 1,000, and yeah, you'll definitely feel it.
Somebody needs to make a shirt, say no to glowies. Seriously, no, that's bad. That's a naughty.
Hey, we're
gonna hurt your lungs.
Oh yeah, it's a killer. Want to welcome Forrest into the room, and I believe we just had.
Can't hear anything.
Wade, is that Wade in the house there? No sound for you, Wade? Oh.
I've got sound here. How you guys doing?
Hey, welcome, Forrest. How are you doing?
Hey, doing good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Dude, thanks for coming in with a professional microphone and headphones, dude.
Yeah, well, hey, it's not my first rodeo. I just had to bust out, the good stuff for you guys. Round one.
Dude, much appreciated. I was hoping Tony was going to be in here to kind of give you guys a proper introduction, but well, maybe you can give yourself a little introduction and what you guys have been up to here in this wonderful world of ours.
Yeah, well, no problem. We're up here in Nevada County, and I was really active when in Nevada County, like a lot of counties here in California, they started implementing these cultivation bans that the League of Cities were really pushing hard all across the state. Yeah. And my son, Silas, has one of those rare forms of epilepsy. He has Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, which is one of the few approved conditions that are horrific enough for Epidiolex and other medicines to get FDA approval. And when they started putting those cultivation bans in place, essentially the medicines that work for him were very special, custom made. They weren't the standard CBDs that people associate with kids with epilepsy. So when they started banning things, all around the county, I started to really get active with advocating for these kids and adults who, needed cannabis medicine for not just pain conditions, but some of them for terminal and life-threatening conditions. And long story short, we ended up, with the help of a lot of folks, raising enough money and fighting hard enough to switch Nevada County from a red to a blue county. And then we were able to have the only victory in the June election in California that was positive for cannabis. So we were able to prevent them essentially from solidifying the cultivation ban by popular vote, which really kind of turned the county on its head, and no one expected us to be able to do that. And from there, I've just continued to be a pretty strong activist on the state and county level, and really work hard to kind of really switch the conversation of morality and ethics, that people like to hold when it comes to cannabis, and turn that mirror around in the face of the prohibitionists, and really show them the suffering of children and adults, people who are dying out there, and kind of hold up a mirror and let them know that if they're going to put policies in place that cause people to die and suffering to happen on immense levels, then they're going to have to watch it happen. So we started posting videos of my son and his suffering, along with other kids, with the Make Them Watch hashtag, and really started to rub in their face on the county and state level that we have the moral and ethical high ground when it comes to medical cannabis, and we just need the right people to be able to articulate that message so that we can get some protection for those who need it. So that's kind of where we went from there, and from there we started organizations to help protect those kids as well.
Well, I've always said it, Forrest, that the last leg of prohibition will be the children, showing, because the propaganda is so strong, but there's never really been, the only propaganda against kids, of course, has always been that, it's dangerous for the kids. We have to protect the children from cannabis. So there really didn't spend the money on that level of propaganda, that when you have a suffering child show up across, where they see this, they're exposed to it, and then they see the help that can be done from it. I've really seen even the staunchest prohibitionists melt away that last leg to stand on. So I definitely applaud the work that you're doing. Can you tell us a little bit about the form of epilepsy that your son is suffering with?
Yeah, so he has Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, and Lennox-Gastaut is one of 9 what are considered catastrophic rare epilepsies. So a lot of people in the cannabis community, because of Sanjay Gupta and those specials, have heard of Charlotte, right? And Charlotte's Web. That little girl, Charlotte, has Dravet syndrome, and Dravet syndrome and Lennox-Gastaut are 2 that get the most attention, I think, when it comes to rare epilepsy, because they have just uncontrolled seizures. Silas at his peak was having somewhere around 2,500 seizures a month. So you have my son. He was a healthy, normal, met all his benchmarks growing up child. He wasn't a child who was born with an obvious disability, which is something I try to talk about when I do lectures or public comment, because I want people to know that when we're fighting for these rights for families, we're fighting for the rights of those who don't know they need it yet. Many of them might be arguing against us until their kids get sick. But Silas was a normal, healthy boy until about 3 years old when he had his first seizure. And when it came on really rapidly. So it was a matter of, when he had his first seizure, it was a matter of weeks, not months when he had a second one. It was a matter of months, not years, when he was having them every day. And within a year, he went from this healthy 3-year-old boy playing and causing trouble like they should be to having upwards of 1,500 seizures a month. And essentially with Lennox-Gastaut and other conditions, when people think of epilepsy, they think of grand mal seizures typically, right? Shaking on the ground, spasming. These children have 10 or more different seizure types. And it's sometimes Silas would have 3 or 4 different seizures simultaneously, or in clusters of seizures. So it's just a horrific condition. And there was nothing they could do. They put him on these medications. They start with mild ones, quote unquote mild ones, with Triliptol and Keppra, which causes just something you can look up called Keppra rage. It just causes people to just lose their mind psychotically, but hopefully it'll stop the seizures, which it didn't. And they go through all these medications, Depakote, up to harder ones, and they get into the benzodiazepines and the opioids. And you have
Forrest.
Yeah.
So you say this just casually as a father, but when you actually watched your child for the first time, actually experienced it, what did you go through? I mean, you're talking about it very blasé-like, and I understand it, but explain to somebody what that experience entailed, because I know it wasn't easy.
Well, yeah, no, it's not easy. It's terrifying. I don't know if anyone has experienced a seizure or watched someone go through it, but it's an extremely helpless situation. The first time Silas went through a seizure, he was getting ready for school. It was preschool, obviously, and we were getting ready in the morning, and he just started walking around in circles. And I was like, "Hey, Si, come get your breakfast," normal kid stuff. And he didn't respond. He just completely, it's like I wasn't there. So my first reaction was kind of just like, "Hey, Dad's talking. Don't ignore me. We got to get ready for school," normal stuff. And he didn't respond again. And I went and kind of grabbed him by the shoulders and said, "Hey, are you okay?" And he was just gone. He was just blank stare, gone. And then he threw up like all over my feet. So at the time, I didn't know a lot about seizures. So I thought it was really odd, but kids get the flu, they get other conditions, they can get delirious. And I'm like, hey, maybe, it's just something like that. And he'll be okay. But it was really strange. So the first seizure I witnessed, I wasn't even positive that it was one. But again, like I said, he had another incident just a week later, and it was really obvious because I had worked with kids for 15 years. I was working with kids with mental health issues and other things. So I had some experience with epilepsy and a lot of experience with children. So I knew something was wrong, and you're terrified. It's this helpless situation. Your kids, when something goes wrong with your brain like that, and you see someone's spirit go away in their eyes, it's a horrific thing to witness. And we went to doctors initially, and of course they say that it's no big deal. A lot of kids grow out of it, but his progressed so rapidly that it was terrifying. You ask what it was like. I mean, the initial seizure was scary enough, and anyone who's witnessed that, including legislators, which is why their opinions switch so quickly when parents are visiting them and kids start having seizures in their office. It's a terrifying experience, but the worst was just how rapidly that it happened. When you're having that many seizures, when you go from none and healthy to 1,500 a month, it does a lot to the brain. It's just like getting, I associate it with, imagine you have your son or your daughter or your granddaughter or niece or nephew, and someone were to just come in the house anytime they wanted, and you couldn't do anything about it, and just tase them until they were unconscious, until they wet their pants or soiled themselves. And then they continued to do that as many times as they wanted, and there's nothing you could do but watch. Eventually, he lost brain function. His cognitive ability stopped. His speech declined. Within a couple of years, he was just able to lay on the couch and while we popped rescue medications in his mouth. And that experience of having to watch your child slowly seize to death within the course of a year or so is something that I wouldn't wish on my own enemy, and we had to really come to terms, like a lot of parents do, in a lot of different conditions, from cancer to epilepsy to other rare genetic conditions, having to come to terms and look at your own child and come to terms with their mortality, and really have to accept that we're going to watch him slowly die in front of us in this horrific, totally inhumane way, is something that it's really hard to put into words. But it's important to understand that it's that horrific, to understand how important the access to cannabis medicine is, because that's where we were when we finally found what was going to work for Silas. We had actually given up on everything.
So how did you find cannabis? Where did you finally hear something enough, you took action enough to go there?
Well, when your kids are dying, you'll try anything. I would have tried, you name it. I'd have
Yeah,
fed
but
him
you had
paste.
you had to have it from somewhere. You had to have read it somewhere, or somebody
sure.
told you.
Well, I was lucky enough here in Northern California. I started meeting other parents. Obviously, it was a little bit before that, but when the CNN special came out with Sanjay Gupta, it got more attention. I met some of the parents who had taught Jason David, who was doing Jaden's Juice out of Harborside at the time, how to make medicine. And basically, so I had known people within the, it's a small community, some of this rare epilepsy. And so I was able to, I wasn't afraid of cannabis. So it was just learning about it. So, basically through hearing it through word of mouth of other parents when it was on television. But I started driving to Oakland. I'm up in Nevada, outside of Nevada City. So it's about a 3.5 hour drive. And I started driving back and forth, buying whatever they had at the time. And back then it wasn't much. I think they had like one Jaden's Juice, like high CBD bottle there for like $300. It was like $320. And I would go through that in 10 days with Silas and then drive back. And we were spending thousands of dollars a month. And he never had a single day without a seizure. It never worked for him. It didn't do anything. So,
and how much dosage were you giving him initially?
They didn't know. I still don't know looking back. You would ask them back then and they couldn't tell you how many milligrams were in the bottle initially, what strain it was from. I think it was maybe like, we just didn't have, there wasn't really parent education out there to talk about what was necessary and how to do milligrams per kilogram and really understand some of those things that needed to happen. But looking back on it, I've tried to recreate what it was. I think it was somewhere around 300 milligrams a bottle. We were going through that in about 10 days. So, he was getting, I don't know, not much, somewhere maybe around 50 milligrams a day, something like that. But he wasn't having success. And we did that until we ran out of money. So that was all through 2014. We got to a point, and this is where with the Caladrius Network and this organization we started, we really worked to educate parents, because we got to a point where a lot of parents get to is where you don't understand enough about cannabinoids. You just think that cannabis is one thing, and you try a high CBD medicine and it doesn't work. And then they decide, well, we tried cannabis and it didn't work for us, so we're not one of the lucky ones. And I know families who's lost their children after that. And you go back and look at what they were given, just like you asked, and they weren't given a therapeutic dose. They weren't given quality medicine. And they never really tried anything. And luckily I had some other parents who had a little bit more knowledge and recommended some things that I could start doing to read. And I started, instead of giving up, I just started reading everything I could find. So I started emailing Ethan Russo. I started emailing Bonnie Goldstein. I started getting them to forward me every paper they could forward me, and just started learning the language of the scientific studies myself, and started to understand that we hadn't really tried anything, and began looking at, back then we were looking at just different ratio things. A lot of the terpene science wasn't out yet, but I went 1.5 years with no success. It wasn't until we started using strains that were more balanced, more in a 2-to-1 ratio, strains like Medihaze and some others, that we saw kind of that miracle cure. And it happened. I saw it firsthand. Silas was on the couch, unable to speak, really just in a really bad way. We didn't think he was going to live through the year. And when we started with the Medihaze, and I had tried other 1-to-1s and 2-to-1s, but it just didn't respond, which is why I'm such an adamant advocate of the entourage effect and learning about terpenes and how they modulate these other cannabinoids on the receptor. But when we tried the Medihaze, it was the first day in 3 years he didn't have a seizure. It was that story you see people talking about on television. He didn't just go from 2,500 seizures to 1,600 to 1,500. He had over 100 seizures on Friday and 0 on Saturday. They just completely stopped.
When you say 2-to-1, is that 2-to-1 CBD or 2-to-1 THC?
Yeah, 2-to-1 CBD. Typically put the CBD in the front slot and the THC in the second. So if we have 1-to-2s or 1-to-4s, but yeah, so it was about half or twice the time CBD to THC.
And is this in an oil, in a tincture?
Yeah. It was in an oil from full extract, right? Suspended in I think we were using olive oil back then.
And you're directly dropping the oil into his mouth.
Sort of, yeah. They're, the thing that with a lot of these kids is they're not cooperative, and so we hide it in things. We use this, and I've gotten other parents to use it since then too. Like they make those omega-3. Have you seen them, like omega-3 lemon cream and like blueberry in the health food section of your stores, and it's like tastes like custard, but it's like omega-3 vitamins, which we were also trying to get into them. So we would hide it in there and take it, which is a problem because, as you guys I'm sure know, when you take something through the stomach, meaning that's different than sublingually when you hold it under your tongue and absorb it. It's a lot harder to get a consistent dosage when you're going through the stomach and the liver and all those things. So it took us a little time to find what worked for him, but when it did, it worked. And he went 4 months without a single seizure. So take what I was saying about watching your child slowly seize to death and coming to terms with that, and then one day it just stops. It just goes away, gone. Within 2 weeks, he was talking and running around like he had been before. Not only did his cognitive ability not decline, like is the concern with cannabis, but he actually had a higher functioning than he did prior to using it because it was able to help correct some of the other neurological issues that he was having. So it's a life-changing experience.
The oil, does the seizures stop?
We haven't had that experience. We make, through the Caladrius Network, we make intranasal sprays, right? So these guys that you can take and put in through the nose that we had the most success with, just like they do with other diazepine and benzo medications like midazolam. There's a nerve up there that you can stimulate, and we've had success through intranasal sprays. Not as much through sublingual, because even with sublingual, you're looking at 15 to 20 minutes absorption time, and in the terms of a seizure, that's an eternity. I've seen videos online of people rubbing oil on feet and doing sublingual. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I just try to be really methodical and careful about what I say does and doesn't work, because things spread pretty wildly online. So I haven't seen that be effective personally. And looking at how it works in the body, I don't see how it could right away, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't.
I was going to ask, how much CBD per day is he taking, like on a ratio wise? Is there a percentage that seems to be working to keep it at that level? Because we have a patient up here by name Haley, and she's on the same ratios of a strain that's more higher CBD to THC ratio, and she has to take up to like 400 milligrams at certain times of the day in order to make sure. And similar effects up to 2-3 months seizure free, but with her, she seems to during her cannabinoid period and stuff like that is where we seen that she has her problems and stuff like that now that she's 21 years old.
Yeah. Well, Silas, we have a long story with Cy, and that streak didn't last for him. He's not doing as well as he was. But the way I've come to understand it is I work with a lot of kids. So Silas's CBD dose right now is up in the hundreds as well daily, somewhere around 60 milligrams THC daily, but that fluctuates. And the one thing I've seen with working with a lot of other kids now and other families who've come to us for help is you could take the same kid in the same condition, and you're going to see one might respond to something completely opposite than the other. And my working theory on why that is, with my understanding of the endocannabinoid system and what cannabinoids are actually doing at the GABA receptors, the CB receptors, and the TRPV receptors, is that when we see a seizure, I think it's important to know, if you're working with people, the seizure is the consequence, right? The seizure is the failure in the body, right? So that's the dam breaking. What we can't see is what's causing it underneath, and it could be very different for different people. And these different cannabinoids do different things. They respond differently to different receptors. If the problem, a lot of different things can cause seizures, from inflammation to physical damage. And that's where we struggle when we try to find a universal what do kids or what do these people need, because we're looking at it as what do we need to stop the seizure, but really if we had the science and the ability to, we need to look at what is causing the seizure, and that's going to help narrow down.
Can I ask you a couple questions? Is the 60 milligrams that you're giving them, is it active or is it acid? When you said it was THC.
The THC is active.
It is active. Have you tried just the acid and seen if it has a similar effect, even though it has no psychoactive effect?
Yes. Yeah. No, he gets THC. So his medicine is more complex than CBD and THC. So it's got measured out levels of CBDA, THCA, THC, CBD, and CBG. And we've just continued to fine tune that over the years.
Do you take any natural GABA by any chance?
Say that again?
GABA, like natural GABA. I used to take GABA with B6 with converted forms of THC to help with like more slow down pain transmission and stuff. And it's something that we've talked about here with Dr. Hornby and with Haley, that taking natural GABA with the converted forms of the CBD THC ratios to help slow down that kind of.
Yeah, I've read about it, but I haven't done it with Silas.
Yeah, it's something that consider taking a look at. It's something I talk about quite a bit, and how GABA reacts with converted forms of the THC binding that helps slow down. So it's just some research that it's kind of more of stuff that we read over the years. But I'd like to send you a paper that we wrote. Well, not myself, but Dr. Hornby and Bree and stuff wrote on these specific receptors dealing with natural amino acids and THC and the CBD. It works for a lot of people that I deal with. I'd love to send it to you.
Yeah. No, I'd love. I'm a paper junkie, so send them all.
Right here, it's something that it's something to really consider. It helps with people that I know. So hopefully we can get that same kind of response with your son.
I have another question then. Is to use, hemp has the other oil, hemp seed oil, which is rich in essential fatty acids and proteins, and do you supplement and do you give your child hemp seed oil?
No.
Because it speaks to I think the cannabinoids are fantastic when when you're speaking to the dash light going off the seizure, but trying to speak to, how do we fix what's happening prior to that? And I mean, there was a movie, Lorenzo's Oil, you may recall. Yeah. And what this was us realizing that we're all lacking essential fatty acids in our diet. I mean, the whole 20th century diet has been malnourished because of basically shelf life, homogenization, flash pasteurization. I mean, they've destroyed all the EFAs. And what I would recommend is, any health food store, organic hemp seed oil coming out of Canada, and all of you, I mean, everyone listening, but really to the people that are having seizures and problems, because, I mean, just Google, GLA and read for a while. It's amazing. And hemp seed has a perfect balance of linoleic and linolenic oils, unlike flax. It's actually the perfect oil to give anybody, and I would highly recommend you try that too.
The building blocks of endocannabinoids right there.
Right. We used it as a carrier oil for his medicine for a long time. Ended up after a while switching to MCT, but didn't really measure out the doses as far as seeing, if there's a significant dose of the oil that would have an effect.
You can't, with hemp seed oil, you cannot. For instance, with flax oil, you can overindulge because the linoleic and linolenic oils are in the wrong ratio. You can actually get an EFA deficiency using flax oil. But hemp oil, a really good book for you to read is by a Canadian doctor. It's called Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. And it's fantastic. It has a whole chapter on hemp seed nutrition, and it's really quite eye-opening. I wish more people would tune into that other side of hemp, because I think that it can be the preventive medicine side of this. I mean, I love cannabinoids. God knows I needed them when I was sick, but I've done everything in my power as an adult to basically take care of myself so I don't ever have to see the, inside of another cancer ward unless I'm visiting.
Yeah. Well, I think the same for CBD is true. I mean, I think that everyone should be on some sort of supplement of CBD just for its neuroprotectant abilities and its ability to be preventative, not wait till something's wrong, but keep that endocannabinoid system balanced long before it happens as a preventative use.
Do you want to maybe introduce Wade and tell us how you guys kind of came across each other's paths?
Sure. So I met Mr. Laughter here while doing our advocacy work. I think Wade could probably tell you where he saw me first, because I was raising a lot of hell here in the county. But ended up getting to know him and his rich history with working with medicinal strains as someone who identified and was able to put the strain Harlequin out into the world, which I think we all know really well. And before long, with my fascination and studying of cannabis and obvious motivation to not just help my son, but help other kids, we bonded pretty quickly and spent a lot of time now working on those things.
Monica?
So, there you go. Oh, there's Wade. Wade, how you doing this morning? You're live, my friend.
Oh, hi. That was beautiful, Forrest. And I see quite a crew of folk along the bottom row of my screen here. I'm not very adept with computers, but nice to meet you guys.
Welcome, Wade, to Hash
Thank
Church.
you.
And take your time, and we're happy to have you here.
Thank you. I don't know where to start. Yeah, I met Forrest, our local jurisdiction. He and I both live in unincorporated areas of Nevada County, and our local supervisors, in response to the passage of MRSA here in California, enacted a total ban on outdoor cultivation here in the county. And Forrest presented a very effective presentation to the supervisors about the predicament that he was having. And I happened to be at that meeting because, as someone who discovered years ago the potential healing properties of cannabis, his story was very compelling to me. And so I introduced myself, and yeah, I feel like my work, particularly in the last year or so, has really been much more of an advocate for patients' rights to access to clean, affordable medicine. I really understand and care very deeply about what cannabis is as a healing plant. So, yeah.
Tell us about your relationship with Harlequin and how that came about.
Back in 2007, I had a collective in San Francisco working indoors, and one of the persons who was in the collective with me had worked on a farm in Switzerland, where they were. In Switzerland in those days, you could grow as much cannabis as you wanted on your property. You just couldn't sell it. And so the property owner here in this case, his family had money, and in that traditional thing that happens in Europe, he went on a long trip after he got out of school and collected seeds from various parts of the world. Because there was a land race of cannabis that was acclimated to the mountains of Switzerland, a sativa that never finished flowering. And his family and other farmers in that valley tolerated this plant because their cows would eat it if they had the chance. And the farmers had learned that if they kept some of this plant around and offered it to their cows if they were sick, their cows would get healthy, and Swiss farmers liked their cows. And meantime, this young man didn't like that this beautiful plant never quite finished flowering so that he'd have a chance to experience it. And so he crossed that original Swiss land race with a sativa from the mountains of Thailand, a sativa from Colombia, and a Nepalese indica from Mustang area. And those crosses back on that original Swiss plant produced the seeds that became Harlequin. And when I received them, I was looking for some new genetics to work with. I wasn't specifically looking for CBD, but I was really struck by the vitality of that plant, and eventually tested it at Harborside, and they told me that it was a pretty extraordinary plant. And I'd already worked with a group of patients enough that most of the patients that I worked with expected psychoactivity from their cannabis, and they loved the smell of Harlequin, they loved the taste of it, the look of it, the feel in the bag, everything about it was beautiful, except wasn't very psychoactive and kind of a disappointment for most of them. But one fella told me that he thought it was really weird because it didn't get him stoned, but what he noticed was that he had a shoulder that had been surgically repaired from playing football. And he had been through opioids and whatnot trying to reduce the pain so he could use his arm. And he found that when he smoked this cannabis that I'd offered him, it didn't get him stoned, but his shoulder didn't hurt. And he didn't understand what that was about, and he thought it was important. And that's when I found out about CBD. Harlequin, the original test results came back at about 8.5% CBD and 5% THC. We've seen much higher readings from it. It turned out to be an extraordinary good mother plant. A number of folks have bred it. I personally, after we identified it, realized that it felt important to get as many copies of it out into the world as possible, so that as many people as possible might have the chance to benefit from it.
Who named it Harlequin?
I'm sorry?
Who named it Harlequin?
Oh, I did. When I was first growing it out, there were two different phenotypes from the seeds that I had. And one of them was more vital. That's the one that eventually was named Harlequin. I was doing this whole story is on my website, by the way, and I don't want to take up all of our time with telling you something that you can find.
We have lots of time. Trust me. We have 4 hours.
Okay.
Each story, and we'll drop your website as well, so people can go there later and check it out as well.
Cheers. All right. Well, yeah. So I was working indoors, and part of indoor cultivation, for any of you that have done any of it, is remember that you have to recreate nature. You have to make everything as perfect as possible for the plants to really flourish, to express their genetic potential. And so at that point in my learning process, I had gotten to the point where, in talking to the plants, I knew that they had the best light that I could find. I knew that they had the best water that I could make for them in San Francisco. I had the best soil, the best mix of what I considered nutrients that would provide what they needed without really pushing them. I'm a big fan of organic, if you will. But at some point in conversation with the plants, I realized that they evolved in connection with the earth, that there's actually an electrical frequency that the earth provides to plants that I was depriving these plants of, because they were in bags on tables in a concrete room, not unlike a prison, if you will. And so I was doing an experiment. I hooked up a length of 10-3 Romex cable to a copper pipe that was carrying water that I knew was good to ground, and gave wire to 4 different plants. And I had a control group of 7 plants that were all Harlequin cuttings at this point. They hadn't been named Harlequin yet. And 4 of them got ground from this, through the wires I hooked them up to. and 3 of them didn't get ground. And they all had the same light, same water, same soil, same air temperature, all of that. And the 4 that were grounded were dramatically happier. It was a pretty amazing, successful experiment. And the 4 that were grounded stood out in this large room of plants because they took on all kinds of colors. They were purple and reds and vibrant shades of green. And it really reminded me, I love live theater, and one of the characters in one of the earliest operas is the Harlequin. He's the jokester. He's the prankster, the coyote in the Native American culture. And this plant was clearly a game changer. It was a dramatically happy plant indoors, and so I named it Harlequin. That's where the name came from.
Did you smoke it before you had it tested at Harborside?
I tried it. I wasn't impressed. Quite honestly, in those days, I enjoy smoking hash, and I was making hash from the things that I was producing. I didn't like working with anybody else's material because I didn't know how they had treated the cannabis. So I always had small quantities. And the farm in Switzerland, that was what they were doing. They were growing cannabis in order to produce hash. And my hope was that the seeds that came would be a hash producer. And I found that Harlequin's hash was nice. But for me personally, I enjoyed the psychoactivity of the cannabis that I was producing and consuming, and Harlequin was a disappointment for me there. But what I found really spectacular about it, and it helped reinforce the idea of getting it out to as many people as possible, is when I smoked Harlequin, I felt like I had just gotten out of a nice long session in a hot tub. All of the joints in my body where I creak a little bit when I move around, it just felt relaxed in my body. And that's really my general experience of CBD today. I regularly consume a tincture of CBD because it helps my body feel more comfortable.
Before you had it analyzed the very first time, did you know it had CBD in it, or did you feel it had CBD, or was it a complete surprise?
It was a complete surprise. I wasn't aware enough. I was trying to educate myself at that point about the various kinds of cannabis that were available in the San Francisco marketplace, and but I was not very educated about CBD. A gentleman named Fred Gardner,
right,
who's the publisher of O'Shaughnessy's and an incredibly beautiful man, helped me get started on the process of learning about cannabinoids and terpenes and the various expressions of the genetic potential that we find in the plant.
But yours is also one of the first spikes out here that we found that actually had CBD, to the point where we had to go find further research to actually find what this other spike was, if I'm not correct, because I was one of the earlier pioneers in testing, and I was talking with Fred, etc., and yours was one of those rare anomalies because we were finding, I did 1,500 tests through one lab and found the majority of phenotypes really had a very similar profile, but yours had a significant spike that was not THC, to the point where we had to research, and we were able to find it through Meshulam's TOS data, but unbeknownst to us later, that that was the spike, because your cannabis I remember talking with Fred, and it was being such a bizarre thing that we realized that if this was one type of cannabis, there had to be other types of cannabis like it, but it was quite incredible.
Yes. 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 I think part of what made Harlequin what it is today is that it was a fairly unique plant. I think it sprang from all those land races that that young man went and sought out. The other thing that I have to say that when Harlequin was first tested, the folks at Harborside shared with me that there were a couple of other tests, and I think in conversation with either Fred or Steep Hill, I'm not sure who exactly told me this, but at some point, I believe Steep Hill had something on the order of 14,000 samples that they had tested in California, and something on the order of 10 or a dozen of them had CBD in excess of 4%. And of those dozen, 3 of them had live plant material of that test result. And I eventually had a chance to meet a number of folks who had one-off seedlings that they had grown out, that when they got them tested, they came back with CBD in them. Swami Chaitanya comes to mind, had 2 different seedlings he named Ganjama and Shaktipat. Both of them had CBD in excess of 4%, but he didn't know which exact seed group he had taken those plants from. So, and meantime,
So
he'd harvested the plant and didn't have cuttings.
So I'm
But
just clarifying, because
Yeah.
I'm just clarifying this as the history in recent California. I think, Sam, when was the first time that you actually tested and had significant CBD spikes that you started following CBD, or did you along the way, Sam? Because I know that it existed before Harlequin, but in the recent history of California, Harlequin is like the cornerstone, or will be known through history as that cornerstone of that spike that made us go further past the THC spike to see that CBD was significant.
Yeah. Our first CBD varieties were around 2000, maybe a year earlier or a year later, but around 2000. And we developed it for GW Pharmaceuticals, and we wanted a variety that could be grown outdoors in the UK. So it needed to be a fairly early variety and somewhat resistant to UK's basically unfriendly conditions for growing cannabis outdoor that flowers very late. And by the way, yeah, it was me a lot who turned Fred on to the idea about CBD, because we had developed this work. We actually had our CBD variety, I think, a year or 2 earlier than that, because when we started working with GW, we already had it.
I think up here in BC, we came across that Haley's Comet strain around 2008, 2009. That's when we really started seeing the CBD spikes up here.
Well, our CBD variety was never as high as the varieties that people are growing nowadays. People are growing over 20% CBD varieties now. Our best was about 10%, but it could be grown outdoors in the UK. It would finish early enough, so that was very important.
I have a question. ACDC is a variety that I think flourishes quite well in when its temperatures are in the 70s. Outdoors here in Nevada County, for example, where we can get temperatures in the 90s or even 100, it grows more like a fern. I don't know how well it tolerates the amount of moisture that you'd have to deal with in the UK. And there's a plant that I've seen as high as 22% yields when it's grown in the right conditions in terms of.
Also, too, most of the varieties that until very recently were extremely high also had really more THC than is recognized in the EU for industrial hemp, whereas our variety was below that, so it could be legally grown outdoors in the UK without any special licenses or permissions, because it was truly non-divertible. And what GW wanted at that time was a variety high in THC, which I gave them, and a variety that was high in CBD. I asked them if they wanted one at a particular combination ratio, and they said no. They wanted, you know, to be able to combine them after the fact to make a constant norm.
Now, is that the strain they went on to use for the Epidiolex products?
But Epidiolex, as far as I know, yes. Aren't they using Grace?
I've heard conflicting results, even from some people within GW Pharmaceuticals. So I always kind of ask to see what folks know.
What do you mean conflicting results about what?
What strain they're using?
Oh, well, for CBD, they're using Grace.
Is that? Yeah, I've heard.
That's from us.
Awesome.
We developed the world's first CBD variety. But by CBD variety, I mean high in CBD, like approaching 10% for manicured buds, and it was little or no THC. I mean, really tiny amounts.
Is it the 0.3% line over there as well that they use here?
Yeah, but ours is less than that, so that's not a problem.
Yeah, that's kind of been across the board, including for hemp stuff, unfortunately. Hey, Sam, are they actually testing now for above 15% THC in the Netherlands? Is that considered a hard drug now?
But as far as I know, they're not doing it.
Actual legislation, okay.
No, and I haven't heard of anybody being busted for selling 16% marijuana or hashish.
Because there's still no labs where actually no.
No, the government. There's government labs and the Turnbos Institute. There's a few labs that can be used. There's none that are allowed to test publicly scenting cannabis. No, that's not allowed.
Still, so there's no way to actually get your cannabis tested. If so, you're just going to have one batch tested, but that'll last forever as a piece of paper.
There, as far as I'm aware of, there's no legal way to get your cannabis tested as a simple grower, user, producer, because the labs have to be licensed to be able to legally do this. Mm. That doesn't mean somebody isn't doing it. Maybe they're doing it with
here in Spain, they're only going to be able to, or they're trying to actually test for, it'll only be for THC. They have no pesticide testing. And I was like, wow.
That's not true. Some of the labs do. They have both pesticide, residuals, and they also test for cannabinoids and 18 different terpenes.
How many different pesticides are they testing for? Do you know?
No, I don't know. I don't know what their protocol is or what they're looking for.
We just got new testing equipment in Berkeley that at CW that we can now test 58 different types of pesticides.
Yeah, but pesticide I use is called Secret 59. But don't tell anybody.
Except the 1,000.
I was going to say, don't you mean Secret 60?
Well, I think that one of the things I would love to talk about is a real need is education in the cannabis community about ways to cultivate cannabis that don't require the use of pesticides or fungicides. We really have to help people who are, I think of many of the folks who work with cannabis today as cultivators, if you will, who follow a recipe. And really, there's nothing wrong with it because some remarkable plant materials being produced. But one of the things that's happening here in California, as more and more people are having to get their cannabis tested in order to sell it at a dispensary or at a delivery service, we're starting to get positive test results for pesticides, even systemic pesticides, my God, and molds. And as I imagine most of you know, we've already had patients who are using medical cannabis products whose health has been so compromised that it's resulted in serious medical issues and even deaths. And I say plural deaths. One of the things that's coming in the cannabis marketplace, at least in California, and I think it's already happening in Colorado and Washington, is that when a batch of cannabis tests positive for pesticides and whatnot, or molds, it's supposed to be destroyed. And I heard some folks say that, oh, well, you can take cannabis that has mold in it and you can process it and then it's suitable for use. And I don't know. And part of what I work with in working with patients like Silas is, who's Forrest's son, just to remind everybody, is that the end user, if there's anything in the plant material that you're providing to that patient that could compromise their health, you have the potential to do harm. And that's not what cannabis is about. Cannabis really is a healing plant, and really, I think that humans evolved with it, and we just have to, and it evolved in nature. And if we can provide the things that nature provides for the plants, it doesn't need pesticides and fungicides to defend itself. That's what terpenes do. That's why they're in the plant, to draw our attention and to defend them. Go ahead.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Yeah. Here, I'm taking the year out. We've gotten a very large place to grow with many hundreds of feet long greenhouses and all the right organic. I have given to me now over 200 cultivars.
Yeah.
And an additional 250 seeds of different yet cultivars to do this research with. And one of the things I'm very interested in learning about the cannabis plant and the oil is I feel that the terpenes are potentiators of the oils come from them. Yes. And what I'm determined to find out this year is which first off, I'm going to harvest every terpene I can possibly harvest. I've got a full, complete lab set up at this place, and I've got all the right material to discover this information. I'm going to harvest these terpenes before, during, and after. I'm also going to analyze the soil before, during, and after so that we get some complete answers about some of this. I think that in the future, cannabis oil will be metered out to people with the terpene that potentiates that oil. And so we're starting this year, we're firing up a relational database about this. And we're starting to separate terpenes in a different way than they're being separated now and under different circumstances. And we're having a lot of very, very good success with it. And I think that the whole cannabis world needs a proper education about exactly what is going on, rather than somebody's saying, oh, I know so-and-so makes rock star dirt. Never mind about that. Everybody that's doing it should be able to make the plants respond to love. And when you provide loving care for them, and you provide them with the proper soil, and the proper feed and the water and the proper love, they give you back a reward of what it is you're looking for. And that is the bottom line for it. And when you just treat them like some kind of creature out in the yard that you're growing and you're going to slaughter and sell, then you get that kind of stuff back from them. And so the reason that we're starting this 200 cultivar grow this year is we're also, I want to bring back two things. One, I want to bring back bringing love in the greenhouse and love to the plants in such a way so that they will respond to it. Long ago in the 80s, when my wife and I grew in Southern California area, she was pregnant, and I used to sit in the garden with her every morning for 2 hours with my sitar. And those plants gave us the kinds of gifts that you can rarely get. They grew big, they grew strong, they produced a number of We harvested them 3 times, some of them. And it's because of all of this really sweet vibratory information that was provided to them, as well as the right food, as well as the water and the sunlight. And I think that it's time that we started looking backward at how to cause the plants to give us what we want. Starts with how much love we put into the equation. Okay, so
I appreciate and I love love. The reality is bugs don't give a shit about loves. White powdery mildew doesn't give a shit about your love. All those realities that transpire and those botrytis and all those other realities that are the realities that are having to do with cannabis. I tell people, growing weed's easy. Growing medical grade cannabis is hard. Growing medical grade cannabis consistently is a mixture of art, love, and a lot of dedication. So
yes,
I
yes.
Look, there's no doubt about it. We need to start talking about the realities for people, but it starts in the fall. It starts with actual soil prep. It starts getting things ready back then. And here we are already in March, and people should already have had their plants and veg and should actually be in the ground. And that's the reality of now the arc of the sun that we have going here. So the problem is that inherently from Vancouver all the way down to San Diego, outside we have natural predators. Down in Southern California, I had to deal with a type of moth which caused a caterpillar that grows at the bottom and loved it and stop it from going through the entire stalk and popping out at the top. Now we have to think about biological controls, because I test everything that comes through my dispensary. And the whole reason we started testing, and Debbie and I got into the question of why should we even start doing testing back in 2007, was for that same reason, is that, as you stated, there was a fear that somebody was going to ingest something that was going to cause harm and that they were going to die from it. I ended up with an upper respiratory infection from a type of bud that I thought was excellent, but inadvertently there was something invisible there, and it made me sick, and that made me go, wait a second, we need to find out what's going on. And then what we realized that we had to reinvent the wheel, and fortunately we did reinvent the wheel. But out of that we were able to also find CBD, but we're also finding other needs and other relative needs. However, we're not going to be able to grow and supply the entire California medical market with outdoor cannabis. You're not even going to be able to do that with the retail cannabis as a whole initially. It's not the reality.
I'd like to bring something to light here that probably nobody has gotten a hold of yet or missed. Science has marched forward and decided a way to extract some material from plant matter that it can then spray back on other plants and vegetables that's molecularly thin, but it is a camouflage, and the bugs that would normally attack that no longer see it as food. And these things can be obtained and sprayed around the base of your plant and in the dirt, which is where most of the bugs come from. They crawl up onto the plant. If they can't recognize anything in the way of food there, they're going to go somewhere else and look for it. And this company hasn't let this stuff out yet, but they developed it. I took a look yesterday on their site, and it is some truly amazing material. And I think that it's going to solve a lot of the bug problems, because like I said, most of the bugs and stuff that get on the plant crawl up it.
Well, you know, I also think that we have to look at the other ways that, you know, we have organically met the problems of strawberry, grape farming, a whole lot of things.
Yes.
I mean, the grape farmers have used, you know, sodium bicarbonate, you know, or what isn't it? Yeah, it is sodium bicarbonate or something like that, you know, to check powdery mildew, potassium bicarbonate. Yeah, and it just raises the pH of the water and creates an uninhabitable space for the powdery mildew. And you know, now with the technology advancements we're seeing with water machines, we can actually replicate high alkaline water, which will help rinse away mold and mildews, and we can use acidic water that is not chemically reactive. We can use titanium plates and electrolysis to create this water that stays in this high alkaline or acidic state temporarily, and we can use that as a natural alternative to a lot of the problems that we're dealing with in organic farming. And I think you're going to see that. You're also going to see people start to learn how to feed plants based on what the cultivar needs and not what their opinion on what all general cannabis needs. Because when you look at what strawberry farmers did in the Netherlands, they realized that PM could be controlled by I think it was amino acids. And we're going to learn how to introduce the correct nutrients in the correct environmental conditions to actually help us a great deal when we're trying to deal with things in a preventive fashion.
In the short term, what we're doing is we're trying to cure the problem with susceptible varieties. In the long term, we will absolutely breed resistant varieties. That is the future.
That's already happening. I wanted to share that when I moved from San Francisco to Nevada County, when I first got here, local jurisdiction allowed a limited outdoor cultivation situation. And so I had a nice garden and a chance to really explore how different cultivars responded to the conditions that I had in my garden. And I put some effort into having good soil, put serious effort into looking at properties before we bought property to find a place that had been a farm in the past and had good dirt, and then went about biodynamic and organic approach to building soil and learning about how different cultivars responded to the environment that I have here. And what I've discovered is that a lot of the CBD cultivars do really well when there's bugs in my garden. And I've learned to actually encourage, by planting all kinds of different plants in with cannabis, by keeping a heavy layer of mulch and different layers of types of mulch on the soil, where all those different niches create microenvironments where different beneficial indigenous organisms can get started. And that's where the vitality of the plant, the genetic potential that the plant has in the breeding, has the opportunity to express itself.
You know, I've been growing since 1984, and when we were in Amsterdam, I worked at a place that was all organic. It was in the early 90s, and you know, we had advocated at the time beneficial insects. But you know, I came to the conclusion that I don't care if it's a beneficial insect or a bad insect. I don't want insect shit and defecation that attracts other problems. I don't want their eggs. I don't want any of that stuff on what we're calling medicine. So we really have to learn how to cultivate in a sterile environment. You know, this isn't the 80s anymore, where people are just happy to get a bag of weed and don't know what it was sprayed with and have to, you know, just move on with their life once they score their, you know, zip. But this is really a situation now where people are sensitive to chemicals, where, you know, growth hormones are coming through into the extracts that they're making with these plants. So now there has to be a real focus on making a clean product. Like, and it doesn't matter if it's a beneficial poop or an unbeneficial bug's poop. I don't want it on our plants. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but you know, I'm not feeling coming to.
I think you're being a little bit fanatical, Todd, because man, I've seen wonderful cannabis grown in third world countries, like Thai sticks and stuff. It was absolutely clean, safe, and nice to use. And I'm positive we can do that outdoors in California.
I think the trick, will be, you'll find that different cultivars will flourish in an indoor sterile environment than ones that will flourish in an outdoor scenario. I mean, you can already see that if you just look. I mean, I know the California market a little bit. There are definitely varieties of cannabis that flourish in a well done indoor environment, in the environment that is San Francisco, where you have, instead of hot days, you actually have cool days because of the fog. And it's easy to keep your rooms in a temperature, humidity, filtered air environment where everything is right. And yes, you can do indoor cultivation without needing pesticides and fungicides and have it clean of bugs and whatnot. But it takes, as someone said, dedication, science, and what someone else was calling love, and what I think of as sanctuary. The idea of creating a space where the plants have the opportunity, given the conditions you can give them, to fully express who they are. And when they are in the right situation, bugs are not a problem for them. Bugs are not attracted to them. And what I found
Besides
in my
that,
garden, yeah,
That's
and I
right.
think as we
Any
learn
good
more about the
greenhouse will
different
have
varieties,
infestation.
I
it'll
just
be
want to
easier
mention,
to identify ones that'll work like that.
I just want to mention, Todd, poop makes the world go round.
I just want to mention in Todd's defense, because we're both macro photographers and I was kind of going
Yes.
through my photos, when you see it under the macro lens and there's this black shit everywhere, it really, I mean, you kind of got to see it to feel it, but I totally know where he's coming from, because
I agree.
it's pretty substantial, depending, but at the same time, you know, if you have a healthy soil and you have this living microbials that literally go into the soil and surround the entire plant, there can be bugs on the soil that aren't going to go up and shit on the plant. So I'm sure we'll find a nice.
There's a mix. You really don't want bugs in the soil because bugs lay little worms.
Well,
that go in and eat
outdoors,
the
outdoors,
roots.
bugs
Yeah.
exist in nature everywhere.
But you know, like let's take tomato
sterilize
farming.
a field or whatever.
Sure, but let's take tomato farming for an example. You know, they actually graft the top of a tomato plant that's a good, fast-producing, very, you know, tasty tomato on top of a rootstock that they have learned is able to, you know, benefit that plant better than if they were to just grow it with the rootstock nature gave it. And we're not doing, we're not there. No, we are nowhere near understanding the cultivars that we're using in cannabis quite yet, or in a legal environment where we can do those type of experimentations on a large scale with a lot of numbers and not fear the repercussions of that. So we're going to go.
I have grafted.
The best
I have
tomatoes.
successfully grafted a plant to another plant, though, so that still works with marijuana. And this year we'll do a bunch more of it. And we'll document it. We'll document the root dividing and the plant dividing thing too. All the stuff that's on the pictures on my site, I don't have it from point A to point B because at the time wasn't planning or didn't think it would ever get out or be shown to anybody else. But this year I'm going to find out everything there is to find out, and I'm going to share it with everybody.
All right. Well, hey, why don't we get back to Forrest? He made it back into the room. He was going to tell us a little bit about, I don't want to mispronounce what is it? Caladrius Network?
Yeah, good. Caladrius.
All right. So
Pretty
tell us a little bit. And in fact, actually, before you start, I want to say excellent conversation on growing, guys. Inspired me to potentially get, I guess Wade ended up bumping out of the room there. Hopefully we can get Wade back, though, not just today, but another day, and really do a full panel on growing and spend like 4 hours talking about growing. There's Wade back now as well. Thank you, Monica, for getting Wade back on and bringing him back to the room for us. And yeah, so we're going to get back to Forrest, and we're going to talk a little bit about Caladrius Network and talk a little bit more about Silas and sort of bringing back a lot of what Wade was just talking about. But you might have missed what I was saying, Wade, which was I was really enjoying the conversation about growing that everyone was having, and I would really like to dedicate an entire hash church to that specific topic here in the near future if you want to come back for that. And yeah, let's hand it over to Forrest.
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for having me back on here. I have we're up here in the hills, so Wade and I might drop out from time to time as we get our old-fashioned lines in order so that we can get with you guys in the big cities. But you know, so Caladrius, you know, it doesn't roll off the tongue really at first, but if you look it up, the Caladrius bird was a Roman mythological bird that would fly into the rooms of the sick and ill and was said to be able to absorb the sickness of the person who was suffering and fly off, dispersing the sickness and healing both the patient and the bird itself. So that's the background of the Caladrius bird. And if you look at it's caladriusnetwork.org. You can kind of see some of that imagery we have there. But essentially, it started with just recognizing and working in a population where I saw the consequences of essentially underinformed regulation and how critically ill and catastrophically ill children and adults were the back burner. They were the not the first topic of discussion, but they were really the last topic of discussion. What the initial topic of discussion was money and regulation and commercial activity and our local municipalities being able to restrict that essentially out of fear and old ideology and their need to keep cannabis out of their perfect neighborhoods before it ruined all the children, right? So in that sense of these cultivation bans that were coming up, without the lack of respect for the people who needed medicine for their quality of life or for their life, period. I really I felt like, how do we stay relevant in a society that doesn't respect human suffering? How do we keep these people from being consequences of local governments who really don't understand what they're trying to regulate and the consequences that it brings? So that really kind of got me moving on starting an organization that wanted to do two things. One, educate families about cannabis and cannabinoids so that we don't see the mistakes that we talked about earlier in the show with people trying one thing and giving up before they really knew what they were doing. To educate them to the point where they're not being taken advantage of, because I'm sure, as you guys all know, there's good folks out there and there's other folks who will just give garbage and not really worry about if it's right for the person or not, or they don't have the best practices that we're talking about as far as quality medicine, and will give things that could be potentially toxic and otherwise. So being able to educate families, being able to provide medicine to those who are catastrophically ill is the definition that we kind of have set forth. Conditions that I feel are a very small percentage of the medical cannabis marketplace, but are a small enough percentage where, one, their costs are going to be way above what others would use, and two, I think isn't really something that, when you start to look at the level of suffering, is something that I think is necessary to be a profit point. I think it can do a lot more good for the industry and help change kind of the face of the culture in cannabis and the understanding of the community if we used this magic plant that we work with to help uplift and protect those people in our society, as opposed to look at them as a place for profit. So I started working with like really severe, when I say catastrophically ill, it's hard to show. I don't have pictures here, but we started working with kids with intractable pain conditions like epidermolysis bullosa and intractable epilepsies. And EB, or epidermolysis bullosa, is a condition where the proteins don't form in your skin. And feel free to Google it if you want. Fair warning, it's horrific. But it's a condition where your skin, your skin comes in layers, right? And these children, their body doesn't produce the right proteins to keep their skin layers together. So think of it as like Velcro in between your skin layers. They're called butterfly kids because essentially what happens is anytime you bump the arm or any part of the body, from the eyes, inside of the mouth, you name it, sensitive areas, it just blisters and comes off essentially. And they live essentially like burn victims their whole life until they die. And typically they die in their teens from either skin cancer or some sort of infection from the wounds. So we started looking at these critically ill, dying children, and I wanted to do two things. How do we protect them from this up and down wave of regulation as we try to figure out what cannabis regulation is going to look like, so that they're not victims of those regulations that are being put in place? And how do we get them the medicine they need and help change the face of what cannabis has the potential to do at the same time? So the Caladrius Network's mission is essentially to do that, to educate families. We partner with businesses. So there's a lot of businesses out there like Medicine Box and Verdant Valley Farms are up here in our area. And they have a mission of wanting to do good along with their business model and wanting to do charitable acts. And we essentially partner with these clean, green, or organic farms they put in an extra row essentially to donate every year, and we make and provide medicine to those families at no cost. And we try to use that as a foundation to try to instill charity into what the cannabis industry is all about. You know, I know a lot of people are able to trap every bit of shake, or they're able to sell it for whatever they have for extracts and things like that. But there's a lot of farmers up here who just don't want to worry about that, and it ends up on a burn pile at the end of the year. So we do education to help say, you know, no waste, nothing thrown away, and really try to instill some charity so that we can collect those things that are safe and clean. We partner with other labs to test everything we do, and they donate the test to us. And we're trying to infuse the spirit of charity and donation into the cannabis industry, which comes down to a fraction of percentage of each one of our businesses, but collectively can help tens of thousands of sick and dying children. And the reason it's called a network is because that's what we're trying to do, is then network these businesses to collect each one of those little donations they're able to provide into one place and get it directly into the hands of those who need. So it's a little different than other nonprofit charities that have been established. I'm working hard at the state level, for those who know California politics, with meeting with Senator Wood and Bonta and other senators who help design MRSA and some of the other CBD legislation that's coming up, to ensure that nonprofit charitable organizations can exist. You know, it's one of the ways Prop 64 alone, you know, the taxes required make charitable donation-based organization very difficult to sustain. So, you know, the Caladrius Network is really there to take these people with horrific conditions that ruin families financially and emotionally, and just be there for them at no cost. You know, think of the Shriners Hospital of kids who happen to need cannabis. You know, it's a children's organization, not a cannabis organization. We just want to show people what the cannabis industry can really do as far as uplifting our community. And I think it's a huge opportunity for everybody.
I agree, man. I'm totally inspired by everything you just said about that, and definitely want to become a part of it and become involved and support it in whatever way that I can. And I think it's great. I mean, geez, that's the real deal right there. I mean, that's the energy that, for me, I've always recognized, not always, but that I learned to recognize in cannabis, and to take it to that level, that pure, unadulterated, just loving, like, let's help increase the quality of life for these children. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, you know, I believe full with every part of my body that cannabis has the greatest potential for social good in our community that we have seen in our lifetimes. You know, when we start to look at some of the trials that are being done, look at some of GW Pharmaceuticals, look what Dr. Meshulam is doing with his autism spectrum disorder trials. You know, there is a wave of people who are coming that are going to be looking for educated, informed help as these clinical science starts to show more and more how a lot of the mental health issues can be treated with these things. A lot of autism spectrum disorders, kids from cancer to seizure disorders like my son. You know, there is a monsoon of people coming, and not all of those are dire, you know. So there's going to be a huge marketplace out there for people who are interested in doing good medicine and making a living, which is important for all of us. But at the same time, there's a percentage of these kids that are just in horrific conditions. And I feel, you know, if we come together to help treat and support those, the benefit will outweigh whatever we end up donating or what we see as our bottom line tenfold.
And besides THC and CBD, we can move on to the other cannabinoid. I mean,
Right.
CBN, which is degraded THC, but CBC, CBG,
Right.
THCV, and the other propyl homologs. I mean, there's a big future for all of these compounds.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the work I'm really interested in right now, as far as cracking that code of why some people respond and some don't, is, you know, Dr. Ethan Russo's work on the entourage effect, and how he's finding that, you know, things that we thought to be terpenes are also cannabinoids, like beta-myrcene, is they interact both, and how those interact with the receptors, how they modulate the impact of those cannabinoids. All that it's a big puzzle right now, but within that puzzle, I'm confident is a solution for a lot of people out there who have endocannabinoid deficiency disorders or other disorders that are affected by that system. And really, it's about differentiating where's the market and where is the responsibility of just our community, and what do we want to, what type of role model, what type of role models do we want to be? When I've loved cannabis my whole life, and I found, I don't know if you guys have seen the same, but I found myself in groups of people who were always really informed about the disgusting nature of companies like Monsanto and Bayer. And I'd always be in these groups of people saying, isn't it disgusting what these pharmaceutical companies are doing? They're profiting off people's death. They're profiting off their life. And they actually hold their hand out and say, your money or your life. If you can't pay, then you're done. And I agreed with them. I thought, yeah, that's disgusting and that's horrible. But what I've found coming is that I don't know if people are realizing that the cannabis industry is about to be asked those same questions. They're about to be asked those same moral and ethical challenges. And I don't know if everybody's prepared to answer that. When I'm getting calls from parents who are spending just like we were, I didn't say that in my story, but we lost our home. Harborside got every dime we had as we lost our home on medicines that didn't work for Silas. I get calls from parents all the time that are spending $1,700, $2,200 a month. And when they go back and say we're out of money, we're then faced with that same question. How are we going to respond when parents and people who are dying and desperate come to us and say, is it our money or our life? And I think that with just some networking and planning in the beginning, we can easily take care of the most desperate and critical in our community, and at the same time change hearts and minds of the people who see what we're doing. And
Yes.
that's the kind of connections that I want to see made. It just takes a little forethought, takes a little planning in advance. We talk about like 2 for Tots programs, right, where you've already spent the money on the infrastructure, you've already spent the money on your program. We put in another couple 2 for kids every year. It's just part of something we do.
Truthfully, what we need to see happen is cannabis become dirt cheap. I mean, it has to be on par with what other vegetables and flowers. If you can walk into a Whole Foods and buy a bushel of beautiful flowers, cannabis should be no different. If they can grow sunflowers and other flowers and put them on display with no bugs or powdery mildew as you walk into a supermarket, there's no reason we couldn't go in and buy really fresh cannabis that was certified organic and cut clean right there. And this whole place could change immensely. And it really isn't about, the taxes from Prop 64 or anything. I think their fantasies are going to get shattered, because really what it should be is about everybody having access to cannabis, because we're seeing from the youngest people in our society to the oldest people in society getting benefits from using cannabis. And that's what we all should be fighting for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that it's just economics, right? Remember from school, I mean, where cannabis is priced right now, we have medicine being priced at a prohibition-based, kind of economic system, So we're putting these CBD oils on the same level as what we were getting on the street for, what essentially is an inflated price because of prohibition.
It is an inflated. The saddest part about the last 10 years of the medical cannabis industry I've seen is that a lot of new entrepreneurs have come in with the desires to hold on to prohibition era profiteering, with the legality of being able to make bank and not worry about getting arrested, but they still want to tax the fuck out of people for stuff that shouldn't cost 100 times the cost of production. And it actually pisses me off, because when I hear about people like you should have affordable access. You shouldn't have to lose your house or face going to jail if you grow it yourself to help your child. And it's really hard to just, contain myself, because the anger is just so.
What the real price is, Todd. It's about similar to what the price of a bouquet of beautiful flowers are. Whatever. I mean, especially if they're organically grown natural flowers, that's about the price of cannabis. I mean, it shouldn't cost more than $5 for a big giant handful of it. Not even dried yet, still fresh.
It's, I can't honestly, I mean, they pushed off tier 5 licenses 5 years with Prop 64, and I think it was the biggest mistake they made, because think of how many people are going to deprive the ability to get cannabinoids into their body because people are getting a little extension on their profiteering. That's literally what it is, everybody.
Right.
You know, you're not going to see cannabis in cans for 89 cents a zip until people have already made cash. And that to me sickens me.
Well, I'd also say this. I don't think you're ever going to see it when you have people building multi-million-dollar indoor facilities, as opposed to, say, when we start planting fields like this. Acres.
Right.
It's both gonna happen. I think
So
we're really gonna see massive production when the facilities that are pre-existing.
That's all I'm
switch
saying.
crops.
That's all I'm saying. We need to plant some fields, not plant multi-million-dollar indoor grow facilities and expect to get cannabis down.
If you think about it, Marcus, I mean, farmers for thousands of years, what they do is they plant their crops. If the weather's good, they get a good crop. If the weather sucks, maybe their crop is gone. That's the nature of farming.
For sure.
It will be forever. But
greenhouses are the answer, no?
Yeah, well, greenhouses can make a big difference. You're right. But
it is the key to success.
But wine is not grown in greenhouses in California. And I'll bet you anything there will be places that are conducive to producing the highest quality cannabis outdoors also.
In geographic locations, though, don't you think that those outdoor crops are going to be kind of like in the perfect, like nature creates perfect little micro environments where certain plants thrive? I think that when we put cannabis in the right places that are not susceptible to PM and not susceptible to bugs and stuff, you'll see beautiful outdoor cannabis.
Guaranteed, yes. Todd, and it won't be related to the prohibition. Like a perfect example is Jamaica. Oh, good sense from the West. Go to Westmoreland. Westmoreland has the best herb, and they do have great herb, don't get me wrong, but there's great herb all over the island, and what seems to be more of a reality is that Negril, the West End, was as far away on the island as you could get from Kingston, where the majority of the police were back in the 60s, if you wanted to grow herb. So it was more like a prohibition sort of like push than, you know, say an actual environment, micro environment. Like we know lavender grows, some of the best in the world grows in one particular region in France. And it's like the German stuff is second only to the French lavender because the way it allows for that genetic expression, the terpene profile that is expressed in those particular conditions seems to outdo all of the other cultivars that are grown elsewhere. So cannabis is going to be similar. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're working with some folks out of UCLA who are doing their evolutionary geneticists and are collecting samples to help track the genetic code of these individual cultivars to help try to get samples in from where take Gorilla Glue grown in all these different environments and then seeing how it expressed itself to help narrow down where is that place, what is that fine tune so that you can that sweet spot to be able to find where the plant can really reach its potential in the right conditions for each one.
You know, now though with science we don't know how so much have to learn where the plant originated. We can actually measure the way that it uptakes and the way that it discharges nutrients, and we can actually just look at the plant and see what we're working with, because in a way all we're working with is complex hybrids, because even the land races that we're calling land races are not land races per se. They were cultivated by our ancestors for thousands of years leading up to us getting to where we are today. And one of the points I always made was I don't think we have made that big a progress in breeding, considering there was thousands of years people breeding in places like India, the cannabis we call indica now, you know, and you know we've had prohibition for 100 years. They had cannabis cultivation for thousands.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Even more obvious is when you think about it, until I think it was 76 or 77, no one in America really knew what Simsimia was. They all grew seeded marijuana, or that's what they bought when they had it imported. I mean, very few people saw Simsimia marijuana before the mid-70s.
I can attest to that because I brought back 37 Sanyo refrigerators full of Vietnamese pot and Cambodian pot from Vietnam because there was no customs inspection on GI's stuff back. And when I showed up, with it in the Northern California area with all this Thai stick and Thai and Buddha stick with no seeds in it. Everybody was like, "Where'd you get this?"
I was like, hey, can I throw something out there, guys? I just tripped on while we were talking. ABC 10 is reporting that marijuana growers in California are now eligible for reduced agricultural electricity rates from PG&E, which just happened.
Really?
Yeah, it happened a few days ago.
And yeah, they're saying residential customers are exempt, of course, but the fact that they're looking at us now because of Prop 64 passing, one of those unintended consequences, but I think it's fantastic that we're starting to be seen as equals when it comes, if we're producing strawberries or producing cannabis, we should have equality.
Yeah, they put it up there with the same, they didn't give it a special classification, but they allowed it to be within their ag rates. So I think it's anyone using 70% for electricity or pump, towards what they're growing will be able to get those reduced rates.
Yes, it says that 70% of the annual energy has to be used for cultivation purposes. So there's the challenge, everybody.
Use electricity.
Use LEDs and low energy devices, and then all of it goes to the weed.
Well, what you do is you put your house on a solar panel, right? You cut that down, and then whatever you put, just whatever you're getting from PG&E, you make sure that, or you're using for your cultivation, you put it on your PG&E, you'll hit 70%. No problem.
And for the record, I mean, I grew up an indoor grower, and because of growing up in an urban environment and having to learn how to grow in my closet, but people don't really take into consideration the cost of operation. And like one 1,000 watt light on for 12 hours a day for a 70-day flower period, even at only 20 cents a kilowatt hour, will cost you $168. And when people are sitting there thinking about popping all these lights, they're sometimes not paying attention to how high their energy bill is going to go and how it's going to boost every pound, every ounce they make is going to have a huge impact with how much the energy that they use to produce it costs them. So this is why I bring this up, because we really have to bring the price down. Yeah. You know what I mean? If you only get 1 or 2 pounds under that 1,000 watt light, you are already into it for $170. Not including water, nutrients, equipment, rent, your time, labor, love, anything.
Well, that was outside the dirt. That was one of the big talking points when we were doing education, as far as our local government is, they have this, they were going to allow 6 plants indoors, and they knew so little about cannabis and how it works. It was just like, well, if you can grow 6 plants indoors, no, you're good to go, right? It's easy. They just grow indoors and you can get it for free, essentially, without knowing any of that, expecting people dealing with sick or sick loved ones be able to, one, learn how to cultivate indoors, which doesn't just happen overnight. It's not easy. And then the fact that it would be free, I mean, the cost can be astronomical for some of those setups with the lights.
It is expensive, but for me, when I was only 13, I found the fluorescent lights in my grandma's basement. I found the timer in the front window. She had pots, soil, watering can. The ropes and pulleys were from when we had laundry lines. And all I had to do was go get fertilizer, and I was rocking. So I would encourage everybody to go shake down their house and find their grandma's gardening supplies and start busting seeds, because even a 13-year-old kid living in his grandma's attic pulled it off for a year before she found me.
Well, and that was medical grade cannabis you're producing with those fluorescent lights, huh?
Oh, very fluffy medical grade buds. But it smelled great, and it was better than anything I could buy. It was 1984. And I'll tell you that none of my friends, the first time I passed a joint of the stuff I grew around my friends, everyone started coughing. And when it hit one of my friends, he puffed it, passed it, and he goes, wow, that's what it's supposed to feel like. It was just such a great moment. Honestly, it felt like, yes.
It's like so long ago that you think it actually grew in bricks with seeds in it, huh? Okay,
well, no, my friend whipped out brown pot, and I was like, why is it brown? Because I had only seen my mom's weed, which was always green, and then I grew it, and it was green. And when he showed me brown weed, I was like, what the fuck is that? And he was like, pot comes brown. I was like, don't grow brown. And I whipped out a bag of fresh buds and passed a joint around, and I made a lot of older friends that day, turns out.
Awesome.
Cannabis grow stories.
Outside in the dirt with living dirt and using the sun. You produce I produced 27-foot tall plants in the past using sun. Didn't cost me a damn nickel for electricity and water and oak leaf mulch and earthworm shit full of not earthworm shit, rabbit shit full of earthworm stuff, blood meal, bone meal. Never put a chemical on it. All of them tasted enormous. We always threw 2 or 3 fish in the bottom of the hole. Dug the hole 6 foot deep to start with, stripped the sides off the plant, covered it in root turn, buried the whole thing in the ground until it changed into one giant root, and then scratched food in until the week before we were going to harvest. And
John, if I had done that, my grandma would have caught me way sooner.
Well, that's true, because carrying that rabbit shit upstairs would have been busting you right away.
Digging a hole in the floor would have really pissed her off, honestly. And the hole in the roof.
She comes down, you're just throwing dead fish in the hole. What's up, Grandma?
He's downstairs, so she'll see all the shit he's throwing in the hole. He just dug a hole through the ceiling.
My grandma couldn't believe I grew 6 foot tall plants under fluorescent lights. She was only like 4'11", and when she found them, she was just stunned that these things. She just couldn't understand it. It was really great.
I call it my 65-day forest. That's what one of the seed breeders from Manitoba, who was one of our first hemp farmers, his family had grown seed for 50 years. He had grown seed for 50 years. His family for like 100, and he said hemp was his 65-day forest. He'd never seen a plant like it get that tall in 60 days.
All those kinds
Hey everybody, Etienne's trying to slip out without saying goodbye.
Oh, say goodbye, Etienne.
Goodbye, Etienne.
That story you just told just proves how tough the marijuana plant is. I lived up in a little place in Northern California in the 80s called Tuttletown. It was just a sign on both sides. Wasn't any real town there. But once upon a time, as we were getting ready to grow, the sheriff came driving up the road where we lived, and we threw a tarp over a pot plant. And we never took it off for the whole summer. And at the end of the summer, my wife pulled this blue tarp off of this pot plant, and this thing gave us 1.25 pounds of excellent buds, and it was underneath that blue tarp. I mean, pot is a tough plant, and it'll grow. It's a weed. It'll grow anywhere, but if you pay attention to it and give it a little love, it'll do amazing things for you.
Well, so that's why I don't think that people should have to lose everything they have to save their kids' lives for it.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I just want to bang that drum that everybody who's deciding to work with the plant that has the amazing properties that cannabis does. I mean, hey, maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's some moral and ethical responsibility that comes along with that. If you're going to choose to work in life-saving material, you're going to have to look at, okay, how do we make this work? What can we give back to our community, and what can we do to better our community? And I think, that's not a cannabis industry, special thing. I think if we did more about that in every aspect of our lives, whether you're a mechanic or owning a supermarket, the world would be a much better place. I just love cannabis, and I'm working with this industry, and I see the potential that it has. So I'm going to bang the drum in this industry to be different. Let's walk the walk. And like a lot of us are already. But I mean, and a lot of us aren't. And I think that if we just make it part of the culture, that this is what we do. This is what
we are the culture, though.
Yeah, this is what the cannabis industry is.
We're just coming out of the closet in a way. Yeah. You were sounding a little like Dylan. Everybody must get stoned there for a minute. I really liked it though. But you know what? I think that once we're coming out of the closets like the gay movement did, and people could come out and be gay to their parents. We're having a very similar experience as pot people. We're coming out to our parents, and we're coming out to our coworkers, and now suddenly we're proud of the fact that we don't use alcohol and we smoke pot. And it's changing. It is culturally shifting. And it's going to continue to shift as we get more confidence that the man in blue ain't going to show up and beat us and steal our hash and lock us up and throw us through the court system.
Well, I don't even. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Forrest.
I was going to say, I don't even think we know what our relationship with cannabis is. I mean, I mean, we might all have a personal idea, but you know, I really see the cannabis industry as, you know, it's like a girl who was kidnapped when she was 10 and locked in the basement for the last 30 years.
Yes.
And she had to form under this horrible sort of prohibition that was traumatic and mistreated it, and it formed this identity under these horrific circumstances. And now we're taking that girl out of the basement and putting her in the sun and saying, oh, she's going to be the same thing, we're just going to do it legal now. And that's not true. All we're looking at it right now is through this lens of what it was under prohibition. But I think that we don't even know what our relationship with cannabis would be like if it hadn't been mistreated for the last 70 years. We don't know how it would be integrated into our lives in different ways. We don't know how it would look. Right now, we're just taking that traumatized version of cannabis and trying to put it into the sun. I think in 20 years, it's going to look completely different. We're going to have it integrated into our lives in ways that we never would have imagined, because it was forced to only be this one thing. It was traumatized and molested and mistreated for 70 years. And now we have that idea of that industry of cannabis, but what it can be in the future, I think, is yet to be written. And I think it could be something much more beautiful than even the way it's looked at generally now.
Yeah, I say all the time, cannabis was the first victim of fake news in the 20th century.
All things in good time. That's what I say about it. All things in good time. And by the way, do you know Etienne? Are you related to him?
Who are you talking to? To me?
Are you
Do I know who?
Etienne from Berkeley Patients Group.
No, John. Etienne's not related to anybody on this panel.
No, I'm not.
Okay, I mean, he talks and sounds a lot like Etienne, and he definitely makes his point. But you know what? All things in good time. And yes, cannabis had a bad time, and now it's coming into its good time. And there's a lot of people who are doing research that you don't know about or don't see, or they're not out in the open with it. And this is because people have been slapping down for doing that sort of thing for a long time, as you said. But that hasn't stopped us from doing it. That has not slowed down the march. The march isn't going to slow down. It is going to be successful. Alcohol became successful, and it's fucking poison.
Yeah.
And this is medicine, and it's clearly a medicine. And there's a lot of information that's going to be coming this year, because I know a lot of other people who are looking into it with the same fervor that I'm going to be doing this year. And I think that we're going to find out some information this year that we will be able to turn around and politely offer those who control the reins of making the rules and say, sir, this is what we have found out. This is a potentiator of this. This is a helper of that. This will do this. Here's our relational database for you to take a look at.
Haven't we already done that, though, John? I mean, in all honesty, the information part of it hasn't been the bottleneck. It's been their ability to absorb and basically get away from their corporate ties to take this information as truth, like we all have. I mean, that's the big obstacle, no?
Pray tell why have they put the thumb in the dike of research if that statement is true? I'm sorry, I don't buy it.
Because of profiting from the companies that are making money off keeping it illegal. I mean, straight up. I mean, go read The Emperor Wears No Clothes. I mean, this is what Jack has argued for decades, and I believe he was very right, sir. I mean, it's the industrial side of this, the hemp side of this, the canvas, that's the tree replacement, it's the pharmaceutical replacement, the alcohol replacement. I could go on, and all those companies are profiteering on large levels legally, and go walk into our politicians' offices and fucking grease their palms and then say fuck pot, and they go, yeah, fuck pot, thanks for the briefcase full of money, and whatever you want we'll push. So we
not to forget the prison industry,
Oklahoma fucking earthquakes, and we get all these problems, bro.
Good point, Wade.
We start greasing some palms too. Look, if that's the method, you know what they say, when in Rome, act like a fucking Italian.
So, Mark, I have a question for you, an analytical question. So if material is heavily contaminated with mildew or botrytis, and they make hash out of it, like dry sift or whatever, is the material intrinsically contaminated? Is there a way with chemical solvents to completely make what you capture completely clean and free of toxins?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, you could
So
purify.
you could start with mold and end up with gold.
Moldy product that still had cannabinoids. Yeah, you could purify cannabinoids. I'm not endorsing.
No, I've never done it, so I didn't know. But I would have thought that maybe some of the problems aren't necessarily spores but it's actually they produce toxins themselves. But I know lots of like aspergillus and stuff like that.
Right, they produce toxins. They also start oxidizing the cannabinoids. So I think you're going to see like lower cannabinoid levels. But if you are like making distillate, if you're distilling it and you're purifying it, if you're purifying CBD by crystallizing it or purifying THC by doing a high vacuum fractional distillation, yeah. You're purifying it down.
What you're saying is, in theory, it's totally clean and safe at that point.
I also had a question for Dr. Mark. What have you been smoking?
Yeah.
That's really funny, Mark.
Or eating.
He's smoking some of that crappy ass THCO oil with some of them crappy ass fake terpenes in it. That's what he's smoking.
Oh, why are you puffing fake terpenes, bro?
I'm just saying.
No, here, hold on a second. Can I share my? Can I share my screen?
From a grower's perspective and a consumer's perspective, I think that I don't think as myself as a consumer, I'm as worried about mold in the pot I get as I am about growth hormones and pesticides and poisons that have been added by someone other than nature. Because truth be told, I mean, you can't have a loaf of bread on your counter too long and mold will come in and fuck with you. So at 2 a.m, you better be observant, and we have these other things all around us. I mean, we can't go outside and not have spores around us. I mean, it's impossible not
Exactly.
we're not in a sterile planet.
Right, but haven't we discussed microbials and how
and growth hormones and stuff that are invisible? That's really fucked up.
Yeah.
I don't know. And Mark, maybe you can help me understand this, but I've toured a lot of labs over the last few years. And one of the things I see consistently come up where they're having trouble is some of the extraction heat points to some of these cannabinoids are almost identical to some of the pesticides that are out there. And they're finding that when they're trying to even make those isolates, because they're so similar and where their points are, that they're having a really hard time even separating some of these pesticides when they're in there from some of the cannabinoids. Is that something that you're familiar with?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this before too. I mean, I can't speak from experience in having a data set in front of me that shows that you can or cannot separate out, say, some of these common active ingredients. Most of them would either thermally degrade at the temperatures that you'd be doing distillation at, so you wouldn't necessarily be looking for the compounds. You'd be looking for their degradation products, because some of these things just aren't built to distill. Other things, yeah, you're right. I mean, they are high enough molecular weight that even if you're doing a high vacuum distillation,
Right,
they could co-distill and could potentially contaminate what you think is totally purified product. So you should certainly test anything that goes through distillate. So can you guys see my screen?
Absolutely.
Can you see this?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
we're looking at the certificate of analysis.
Yeah. Okay. So while Mark, you asked, did someone ask what I was smoking?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
We sure did. That's
All
some
right,
CBG and CBC, huh?
Yeah, so this is interesting. So
No CBCA.
CBGA, right?
Yeah.
Little bit, but more
Not
CBG.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously this has been decarbed. There's no question about it, right? There's hardly any THCA. It's all mostly THC. No Delta 8. So that's good. So it was decarbed properly. And not a whole lot of CBN, although, 0.6% is it's measurable. I mean, they could see it here. But John, did you say that this was Trainwreck? Is that this strain?
Yeah, that was Trainwreck. I mean, I extracted that 5 years ago, and it sat in the freezer for 5 years. And Johnny wanted to sell some of it to a friend of his, so he took it out and decarbed it. But yeah,
Okay,
I
so
mean,
this is decarbed
it's
5-year-old. Okay,
Say what?
decarbed 5-year-old Trainwreck made with John's extractor.
Yeah, that might account for the CBN.
John, was this? Would you characterize this as trim or nug or combination of
trim.
both?
It was trim. It
Trim.
was only trim.
Okay.
Trainwreck.
Yeah, well, I mean, holy shit! To get a extract that's 71 or 72% by weight cannabinoids from trim, that's a nice extraction.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a nice extract, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so what that says is that if you add up all these numbers, you can see it adds up to 71.96. So that's the 71.96%. So that means that there's and there's some terpenes that were measured here. Oh, by the way, these results are from CW Analytical Laboratories, courtesy of our friends at Kurova. So courtesy of Danny.
Also, too, Mark, these are the neutral cannabinoids, which means in the acid form they were even higher.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was the extraction method?
The extraction method was John's machine, like all my extractions are. It comes out of my extractor raw like that, and I've been saying that, but here.
Okay, so there's also 1.4% terpenes, and I guess most noticeably here is fenchone and beta caryophyllene. These are not even at 1 weight percent.
Yeah.
So you can see not a whole lot of myrcene here. So probably in the decarboxylation process, which was probably just done in an oven, John. Is that how this stuff was decarbed?
Yeah, under vacuum in an oven, low.
Vacuum in an oven. So yeah, there was probably a fair amount of terpene loss in that process.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I recovered all those terpenes with a cold finger right outside of the oven, so I've got them all. That's the green and golden ones.
Well, yeah, they're no longer in the oil, which is the data that we're looking at. So the point is that 71.96% and 1.46%. So that means of this this material has got probably like about 25% waxes and lipids. It's not cannabinoids, it's not terpenes, it's just whatever's else there that's being extracted that's not there. But here's the wonderful thing is if we scroll down here, we see that there's no isobutane, isopentane, hexane, or any of these other bad actors, no N-butane. So no residual solvents as billed. So you're seeing it here.
Yeah, somebody asked, I thought you didn't need to use a vacuum oven. Well, we don't need to use a vacuum oven for that. We were decarbing it with the vacuum oven. So pay attention.
Yeah. So anyway, there's some data from some oil that was made with John's extractor.
Show us the eye data again. Show us the eye data again.
What's
those two tiny spots behind your glasses?
Oh, yeah.
Straight out of East Van, huh?
No, I would say that yeah. So me and I also Jake sampled it too, so Jake liked it too. But as I think John had mentioned in the chat, I forgot to take the green terpene with me, John.
Yeah, you didn't forget stash, but you forgot the green terpene, huh? That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and after taking all kinds of heat last week on Hash Church, okay, we will figure out what the green terpene is. It'll just take a little bit longer. The world will just have to wait.
The world can wait.
I sent it off Friday. And you know, hopefully next weekend we have some answers about it. I'm very, very interested in seeing.
I can't wait. I'm not gonna wait, and I can't wait.
Well, look, if I could send you a bottle of fucking Amsterdam, I would, but I don't think that's gonna fly. I'm trying to send a little something to someone else I promised, which I shall remain unnamed here, because I was informed afterwards that talking that shit on there is still illegal. And so anyway, look, I'm not hiding anything. I want to get it all out in the open. I don't want people commenting, LOL, green terpenes. Bunch of idiots who still don't realize it's one blue terpene and one yellow terpene mixed that makes green. Probably they didn't have crowns when they were kids.
We don't know that yet.
They didn't get a box of crowns when they were kids, and so that's the problem there. But anyway,
you mean if I take the yellow crayon and I mix it with the blue crayon, I get the green crayon?
Well, like I said,
That's
guys,
right.
when it gets tested, we won't have to guess anymore. I'd really like to bring the conversation back to Forrest, who's kind of our guest here today, talking about Silas. And I wanted to bring
Forrest. Carry on.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring it back to what Wade and Forrest are doing with this group, and sort of talk a little bit more about how Silas has been finding his, cannabis medications for the last 6 months or so. Is he doing better than worse? Give us an update on his situation.
Sure. Well, thanks. Yeah, no, this is great. I'm enjoying the conversation, so no worries here.
Same here.
But yeah, this is, what I mean. It's a long story, but essentially, when the cultivation ban happened up here, what happened to us is what I'm trying to protect other families from, and the people who were able to cultivate for us were no longer able to. The sheriff had a lot of pressure on folks that he knew of, and so we lost kind of our lineage of consistent medication, had to find new extraction methods. We had to just essentially start from scratch. And when that happened, we lost the medicine that we were using for Silas. And I was actually in an ad hoc committee meeting with the board of supervisors when he had his first really life-threatening seizure again. And so after 18 months of he has 10 different seizure types, so some are more dangerous than others, but after 18 months of not a single tonic-clonic, which are grand mal seizures, they came back, and they kind of came back with a vengeance, and so he's had probably 70 or 75 of those in just the last few months. And although I have access, because we're working with groups, I'm having a lot more success with other people's kids. We've tried to recreate what we had before with Silas, and we just haven't been successful. And we're with the limits of where testing is right now. It's hard to kind of put our finger on why that is, but so no, I mean it hurt him. Having our whole medicine chain upended and having to start from scratch has hurt us significantly, and after not being in hospitals for almost 2 years, he's been hospitalized twice. We were having, I think he had 4 or 5 grand mals just last week, and we're working with it. So we're really working on donation basis right now. And what happens is, you guys well know, is even if 2 different people grow the same plant, you're going to get 2 very different things, and it's in those little differences where we're missing, what we had before, and we're trying to work that out. So, no, in all honesty, he's struggling now, and I put a link up here that you guys can check out to a video that we made that kind of shows that. It shows before it shows our local sheriff talking about me and us personally, as far as trying to sell people on the fact that we're just, he really did a good job telling people that we're just a front for commercial growers, and it's not real. And he would say, I don't know what his motives are, if he really cares about his kid, and crazy stuff like that. And we lost those medications, and then I have videos on there of seizures he had just as recently as Christmas Eve here, showing that we're kind of back where we were, or at risk of going back. So I've been able to get his seizures down by probably 80%, and that's huge. And that's important for people to realize that cannabis it's not a black or white thing, and I know you guys know that, but for folks who might be checking this out, it's not that it either works completely or it doesn't. It is still the most effective medicine he's had. But when you're dealing with someone who's had, 2,500 seizures a month, that you knock it down by 80%, that left over 20% still leaves you somewhere around, 500 seizures. So you have to really kind of put that context in there and know that, yeah, things are bad and they're worse than they would have been. But, the only reason we're here to keep fighting is because of the cannabis medicine we do have. But we don't have access. I don't have access up in the hills. I mean, everything in Nevada County is banned. So all the extraction we're doing obviously is not kosher as far as the law, but it also really limits our ability to get sophisticated extraction labs up. So, THCA is not an easy thing for me to come by, where others it could be. We're working more with solventless extractions and rosin presses to help sort of do that. But some of the real more specific high-end extractions, we don't have a lot of access to. We have great extractors. We're seeing 70% full cannabinoids off of our trim extractions as well. But we kind of get what we get with that plant, and we're not able to really isolate a lot. So we're really working towards
extractions.
We're doing distillation extractions mostly, and working with also in with cold water and other sort of extraction methods, rosin presses or something. We're working with more now to help develop more consistent acidic lines. But even with the rosin press, you're going to get some decarb with the heat that you're using, and you're going to have whatever the plant has to offer. You can't really get a THCA isolate and some of those other things that we were having some success with in the past. So we're in a rebuild here, and that's, that kind of goes back to what I was saying about the Caladrius Network and trying to develop a safety net for families so that this doesn't happen. They don't just lose everything all of a sudden, because it's not, you don't just get it back right away with some of these kids in these rare conditions. It takes time.
So here's a question for you, Forrest. I've also, there's sort of two states of mind for me, or two pathways to when I look down. A lot of people are often like, oh, why are you, I showed a molecular short path distillation unit from VTA via Root Sciences, and people were like, oh, why are you promoting that? Why are you showing it? I'm like, well, monomolecular medicine is obviously going to have its place, potentially with, people who are uber sensitive to the cannabinoid and terpene profiles that they're taking in. So sensitive, in fact, that maybe growers won't be able to tune into that exact profile each and every time. Whereas if you were able to create it as a recipe through the monomolecular, the
Right.
THCA or the CBDA or whatever cannabinoids you decided to work with. But then I guess the other path is learning what it is these subtle nuances are that we're missing. Why is it suddenly from one grower to the next that this plant is no longer producing that, even when tested, and it's so similar, there's something missing there that I definitely would like for us to discover. What pathway do you see yourself traveling down? Is it both simultaneously, or are you, do you guys see the monomolecular medicine as something that could really work?
No, definitely. I mean, I think, you got to realize that I speak through a particular lens. So I'm not speaking in generalities as far as what works generally for most people. And I think that your 2-to-1, 1-to-1, 25-to-1 that you see commonly in stores, that's going to work for a lot of general people, but when you're focusing on rare disease, rare genetic disorders, conditions that it's not really profitable to make a whole product line for what maybe this one brain needs, you need to have the ability to develop those in a custom manner. And I don't see how you do that to the specificity that some people need without being able to a certain extent, isolate and then construct, right? And that's where you get into those monomolecule sort of processes. So I'm not afraid of that. I think that the answer is still, I think we're going to find somewhere in where the plant wants to be naturally. I think the plant had this natural profile that was beneficial, and through hybrid breeding, we've kind of knocked those levels off, where we just see lots of myrcene and lots of THC, and we don't really see that profile. And I think where we see a lot of benefit in some of these other plants, it's just that we're getting closer back to that a more balanced profile in its terpenes, flavonoids, and the cannabinoids that are in there. So I see myself really, I'm going down any path that leads to saving a life. I mean, that's really what it's all about. I mean, I don't think that, I do worry, just like a lot of people, about some of what Monsanto's doing, and even what GW Pharmaceuticals are doing as far as being able to single molecule isolate things so they can patent them and not be able to have everyone have access. But I really don't think that's possible with cannabis. That's where that fear comes from. If they were to figure out a way to rein this in to where we couldn't do it in our backyard, it would have been legal a long time ago. But they know that they can't, which is why there's so much fight against legalization, because we really do have the ability to do this ourselves to a certain extent. So I'm not too afraid of it. And yeah, I'm working on all those paths. We definitely want to be able to have a much more sophisticated sort of medicine cabinet, so to speak, to where as we bring people in, it's more like a individualized therapies and treatment, so that we are meeting with them in a wellness center. We are coaching and educating them. We are helping them learn how to track and identify what is successful, what isn't successful, and then being able to, ideally, when the dream come true, being able to really fine tune those medicines.
Dial it in.
Yeah, dial it in for those kids, because they're always there. That need's always going to be there, and that one medicine that might work for that little girl in a wheelchair, it's not going to be profitable to make 50,000 of those and put them on shelves when it's only going to help that one.
No.
So they're.
I always dreamed about this sort of machine, that you could literally plug little vials into that had pure cannabinoids, all the ones that exist in acid and non-acid form, all of the terpenes, and then just have that plugged into a program of actual data that has created, much like Prana did with the Act Now program, creating that digital landscape based on not guessing, but actual, data that people fed into that from their own personal experiences. So it would be an incredible thing to be able to just, pick the cultivar that works for you and turn the little knob and have that thing, push you out a little vape hit or a little sublingual drop or whatnot.
Yeah, something similar. And I think it'll happen. I mean, we're just now starting to understand how these different ligands and agonists work with these receptors. It's going to happen. I think it'll happen in our lifetime, that we really understand causality, not just the consequences of a problem in the body. We know what MS looks like. We know what Crohn's looks like. We know what a seizure looks like. But we need to focus more on the causality and how these cannabinoids affect what caused the problem. And as we understand better how these things interact with these receptors, I think we're really going to get to a point where we'll be able to much more quickly say, this is the recipe you're likely going to need, because we understand the cause of what's triggering the problem.
I want to add something here. I think that the concept that you're describing of having a pharmaceutical machine that can produce custom formulations for individuals based on maybe their genetics and their the condition they're trying to treat is likely to happen. I personally am really more enthusiastic at the idea that as we learn more about the cannabis plant, in the way that Forrest was describing how it's been really a prisoner for so many years, we are increasingly bringing it out into where we can start exploring all the different aspects that the way that plant can express itself. And that it's been my experience in working with other healing plants besides cannabis that they show themselves if you look for them. The plants are there for our benefit, and cannabis particularly is really responsive to humans. We create new versions of it every year, even more often than that sometimes. But as it comes out more and more, the therapeutic aspects of cannabis, I really think that what I would love to see is that people would be able to go to a nursery and have information about what varieties of cannabis are going to flourish in the environment where they live, in the garden where they can grow it outdoors, where it doesn't cost electricity, where they've made soil. And meantime, that plant, we could provide information and or small home scale devices where people could make their own medicine. I really think the plant would allow this, and I think people could benefit greatly from it. And that way, if you will, the marketplace does not own the medicine. That's really what I'm about. I don't want to see pharmaceutical companies being able to define if Forrest is going to be able to help Silas. I want Forrest to be able to help Silas directly. It's a personal thing. I think that's why a lot of people who are involved with cannabis come to the medical aspects. They personally know someone or have an experience in their own life where they realize that cannabis actually has therapeutic benefits besides the joy that one can have with psychoactivity. It really does. It is a healing plant. So again, I think that the machine you're describing is going to be like that will happen in San Francisco if it isn't happening already.
I mean, it's
or in Amsterdam, it may be happening already. But
I say that more as a point of access. I certainly wouldn't want it to be my only point of access, and I certainly wouldn't. I would never accept it as an alternative to my or anyone's ability to grow for myself. I love all of the access points. I want them all to be there. I just want to be able to have, because some people are more comfortable with certain things, and I see this over and over and over again in our community in particular, that particularly with epileptic children, that it's real sensitive dosing and real sensitive profiling, that if any one little thing changes, it seems to just disappear. And that's a scary thing to go through as a parent who's already going through hell with their child having seizures and just affecting everything basically.
What about the idea of having a big grow around a mental institution or place where kids that are needing that kind of stuff so that they can breathe in the terpenes produced all day by this? I mean, we haven't. Flower essence therapy has been around for years, and so now these are flowers, and the terpenes from these flowers are far more potent. They're potentiators of the oil, and the fact that you get high off it as well proves to me that it's a God-given thing. Here, you can have food, you can have medicine, and you can buy. There's never mana in the Bible, but it was manawana.
It's been my experience when patients have come to visit me here at my home and are able to go out in the garden. I ask them to go and look at the plants that are there and find the one that's right for them. And children particularly love to do that. Adults enjoy it as well, and it's amazing to me how often they go and they know which plant or plants that they want. And they're good at picking out ones that are similar to each other. And usually, particularly a child, I'm thinking of one little girl with autism. She not only knew which plant was right for her, she knew which plant was right for her brother and her mother. Her mother was there for breast cancer. She was there for autism. Her brother has, it escapes me at the moment what Jonathan's dealing with. Anyway, pardon me. But yeah, she was very clear about this plant is the one that's right for my mother. And that was a sweet and sour widow, actually, a 2-to-1 phenotype that I got from Jamie in Spain.
Oh, resin.
Huh?
Resin.
Yes.
Jamie.
He's I've been gifted from him more than once in my work.
I pictured his face when you said his name before you said from Barcelona.
Yeah. No, that's one of the ways that Harlequin has played out beautifully in my life. I feel a little bit like Jack from the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. and I found a magic bean, so to speak, and an incredible vine grew from it that I've climbed up into the world that I know now, of having some sense of how this plant can help little children as well as older folk, as well as me. You know, it really is a healing plant, and the criminalization that's happened to it is kind of a tragedy that still continues. It's why, I mean, the difficulties associated with indoor cultivation and the challenges of keeping things free of mold and bugs and whatnot, it does take a high level of skill and dedication, and cost. Professionalism is required, and it's appropriate to compensate people for that. Mm-hmm. So for me, I really, I want people to be able to get this medicine at little or no cost, as was pointed out earlier today by one of the folks who shared today. The true cost of cannabis without prohibition is minuscule. It's comparable to cut flowers. And for children who need literally grams a day of cannabis oil that's 60 or 70% cannabinoids to control their condition or to help them have a quality of life that anyone deserves, that should be, you know, little or nothing. And right now, the only context I can find for doing that, other than the work that I've done with the personal patient group I work with, is with Forrest and the Caladrius Network. We've really, it's kind of popped the top of my head off how many people have come forward just as strongly as you did, saying that you want to help this to happen. Yeah, professional people who do this work and understand the therapeutic possibilities in cannabis, when they hear the story of Forrest and some of the other children, or Forrest and Silas and some of the other children that Forrest is helping, you want to help. And what's a cold hard fact about the Caladrius Network and Forrest's work is that, yeah, there's no money. No money's changing hands, and we're trying to help these kids at no cost to those families. And all of the donations that have come to the network have been from folk who are doing their very best to make the very best medicine they know how to do, and again, at no cost to those children and to the network. And there's no room in the law for this to happen at the moment.
Look,
there's a need for it, and so in a way, Forrest's actions and those of us who are trying to support his vision, it's a conscientious objection, if you will, to the law. I personally am not planning on having a garden here at my home this year, unless the county changes the law, because the sheriff's been empowered to come and write tickets that multiply at $100 a piece per day per every violation of all the hundreds of rules they have. And yeah, he could end up owning my property in no time at all if I had anything like the garden that local ordinance used to allow here.
Well, and that's why
so instead I'm becoming an advocate. And yeah, Forrest's need is real, and he represents, we're working with something between 15 and 20 kids that are in a similar predicament to Silas. And and I know we haven't looked at this video that Forrest spoke of earlier, but it's, you know, look for it online, or maybe Forrest can put I don't know if the Caladrius Network's website has a link to that video, Forrest, or not, but
yeah, we can
it's a very compelling 10 minutes. And you should watch it if you've got any tears in your body, any place. If you watch the whole thing, you should have some Kleenex handy.
Well, let me share with you guys.
It's a real thing.
Let me share with you guys some of the kids, you know, that are not on the video. You know what I share, and I have permission to share, is my son, and I really make sure a lot of the parents' stories, they're just not ready to be public yet because of, you know, social issues and things like that. But I had mentioned earlier kids with a condition called epidermolysis bullosa, All right. So this is one of the kids that we're working with here. His name's Charlie, right? This is that condition where the skin doesn't form the bonds correctly, right? So these kids essentially live with like burn victims for the majority of their life. So we realized that we couldn't impact the condition itself with cannabis, but what we realized really quick is we could help deal and get them off some of the drugs they'd be given. And this particular child was at the time using topical ketamine as prescribed by his doctor. We work with another EB child who uses topical morphine and Dilaudid, as well as being given methadone, both these kids. This is what's being sold to these kids at 5 and 6 years old to deal with pain.
And these kids rarely survive to adulthood, isn't that right?
Yeah, they typically die in their teens from cancer because of the constant wounds. So we started developing and working with really high-end topicals. You know, he had this wound on his neck because the skin folds there so much that it had to be taped shut. And what we were really trying to do is just deal with the pain. And what she told us, and what breaks my heart about these pictures is not the wound itself, but this grimace here that can only come from a life of pain that is hard to imagine. We started using some of the topical cannabinoids, which is, for those of you interested, it's really high in THCA, CBD, obviously high in THC for pain management, THCA for inflammation and those sort of things. But what we were surprised at was we were just trying to deal with the pain, which it helped mitigate. We also saw immediately, this picture was taken a week later. We saw immediately that the wound that had been there for 7 years had started to heal. The places where it was taped shut, this had all healed within a week. It was just left with this general wound here, and within 2 weeks, this wound had healed completely. Something that we didn't expect to see with cannabinoids. This was the poor kid's knee when we started. This wound had been there for 7 years. So I just want to put in context when I say patients and conditions that are more horrific than most people understand, you know, what does that mean? And with internal cannabinoid dosing and using these topicals that we developed, within 5 weeks, this was his knee after the fact. Now, you might see that there's still a wound there, but it's the level of inflammation. You have about a cantaloupe-sized knee here that is swollen, and all these wounds, this guy here had closed, all these superficial wounds underneath, and eventually this wound on top closed as well. Now, what we haven't been able to do is fix a lot of the problems with these kids is that they have the itches as the skin heals, you know. So we've seen in certain strains like Chem Dog and others that the itching, you know, causes them to remake the wounds. But we don't know what these children's life will be like if we can stop the wounds from festering for 7-8 years. That's what eventually kills them. And now we have the ability to treat those things. So, you know, in working with Silas and kids who are suffering, and again, there's that video that you guys can go watch, or we can play it, whatever you think is best. I've met all these other families, and to be honest, some of them are so horrific that I felt like we got lucky, you know, that it could have been worse for even us. And this is just the community in the level of suffering that I hope to make everyone aware of, you know, because I think, like we said earlier, when we see it, it becomes a no-brainer that we have to do something about it. And it's just, what are we going to do? So
where are you at, Forrest?
I'm in Nevada County in California, Northern California. Yeah.
I have excess of oil every month that I could give you. I mean, I give away about 1,000 grams a month of oil and hash to people with Crohn's disease and other problems.
Right.
But I would give you some oil or whatever it is that could regularly. And this summer we're going to grow this really huge place. All the cultivars that you can think of, I've already got all the terpene profiles and cannabinoid profiles for all the cultivars, and I will be extracting from those things regularly and can give you a regular supply.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I'd love to be in touch, really, you know, wonderful. And that's the attitude that I hear from the cannabis industry. I mean, we're only helping a handful of families now because we're small, and we still have to get the legal framework in place for us to be able to do this legally. But the reality is people are lining up to support this cause. And really, what I can provide is, one, we use our brand kind of like we would use a American Heart Association or breast cancer awareness brand, so that companies who are putting in the social good can put the Caladrius Network seal on their product. And what we do is from someone who's just a father and a parent, we try to promote and advocate for those brands that are doing social good and try to teach people in their community, if you're going to support a brand, you too can also help save lives. You too can help affect the lives of these children just by changing your shopping habits and supporting these companies who are out there to do more than just sell a product. They're interested in the good in their communities. And that's where you start to get a mutual partnership that makes helping beneficial in all ways. And I always bring this up, and every company inevitably says, well, we don't care about that. We just want to help these kids. And that's what nobody believes is happening in the cannabis community. They think it's all selfish money and drugs. And that's where I try to get a platform to where they can't ignore me because I'm a parent. They can ignore all of you guys and other adults. They don't care about adults who are suffering. But politicians, lucky for us and for me, still have to pay attention to dying kids, you know? So I get in that platform, and then I start, you know, that's what I talked about earlier, where I start to rub in their face who has the moral and ethical high ground. And what I see is that attitude right there of a cannabis community who not only is able to, but is jumping at the opportunity to help end suffering of these people in these horrific conditions. If they would just get the hell out of the way so that we could do so. And, you know, that's
Have you tried mixing terpenes with the seed oil to see if it's potentiating any of that? Because
yes.
I'm going to spend this
the cream that's going
collecting.
to the EB kids has the terpenes put back in it.
Yeah, we have to put them back in cold so that they stay at the levels we want. But our efficacy went through the roof when we were able to get our isolated terpenes back into the creams that we make for the kids.
Well, we're going to focus. We bought a whole bunch of CM1000 by Science 710 of these very beautiful high-tech terpene collectors, and we're going to be having these hooked up on both sides of the chamber, and we're going to collect these terpenes like there's no tomorrow. Awesome. And I want the first people to get the terpenes. I mean, yeah, they're nice to smoke, but I would like to see those kids and other people who have stuff like that. I would love to see these terpenes potentiate their treatment. That would put a smile on my face that no toke of a joint will ever manage to do.
Oh man, you get a hug from one of these kids and one of their parents, and they're crying, thanking you for saving their kids' lives. And I tell you, there's nothing better than that right there.
I worked a free hospital in India for 12 years, and I very well know that dynamic, man. My only paycheck there in India was the kids and moms and dads' smiles when the kids could breathe and walk better again. So I'm totally with you on this, and I got you back on it. I'm going to give you the stuff that you need to help you along as best as I can as we get this up and running this summer.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah, I think a lot of the differences in those medicines, when we talk about what's changing, that's why I ask the extraction method, because a lot of people are doing different things, but they get the same strain, they get the same THC to CBD ratio, but within that extraction method, all those sensitive phytocannabinoids can be in very different levels with the terpenes and things like that. So that is, I'm convinced just by the work that we've done with tons of families that, you know, that plays a significant role. So I'm glad to hear that you're catching those things.
You know, the cosmos is very mysterious, and sometimes in order to get people excited about something, it has to create a deficiency that the people have to turn around and look at. I mean, mysterious are the ways of the cosmos when it gives us information. When we step from the finite to the infinite on this plant, we will really be going somewhere. I have a feeling that the reason that this plant has all these terpenes and cannabinoids and is also a food source and an oil source and a protein isolate source is because it was divinely given to us. And I think that, you know, this stuff shouldn't cost a bunch of money. But sadly, the system that we have to work within forces some of this. There's a lot of people who are strictly in it long. I hear from them all the time. And it's never been that way with me. I gave BHO away in the first place because I wanted to potentiate healing and for everybody to be able to get high. I was disturbed by the fact that you couldn't get honey oil at that point in time. And so I just freely gave it out. And I'm going to freely give out all the information. And Dr. Mark is going to help us understand all of the chemical processes in our complete lab that we're going to have down there, because we're drafting his butt and bringing it there so that we can bring some resolution to all this. I don't want to guess anymore. Somebody tell me, well, yeah, I think this is what it does based on this. I want to see some laboratory results and a relational database generated out of this project that everybody can dig into and come to the whole world. Everybody deserves healing. Everyone does.
I really want to jump in for a second here and say the data thing is really important. In the work of the Caladrius Network, the two kinds of data that we really need more access to are information about how the patients that are receiving the products we're all making are responding to the therapies we're offering them. And that's kind of hard to quantify, but something that is a little easier to quantify and is probably as important right now is information about what different varieties, cultivars of cannabis, how they express the various cannabinoids and terpenes that we find. My experience has been that, again, depending on the environment and the cultivation practices and whatnot, different cultivars express their cannabinoid potentials and their terpenes differently in different environments. And test results from environments indoor and then test results from that same cultivar outdoor, I've seen them, they're different. And meantime, a body of data built up over that would help guide the breeders in finding cultivars. Various crosses could be made of things that had this and that, and meantime both did well in a particular environment, and the offspring of that cross likely would be something that could be beneficially used quite easily, very responsive to the environment that it was cultivated for, basically going about creating land races, if you will. Trying to identify specific cultivators that have the cannabinoids and terpenes that we're looking for, and that they express fully and to the greatest potential in the different environments that we're all working in. That kind of data, I think, if we could work together, that's one of the goals of the Caladrius Network from my point of view, is to gather that kind of data and make it available to people. So again, people could grow their own, and people who are doing it professionally can start identifying cultivators that would flourish in a greenhouse or in an indoor environment and provide the exact medicines you're looking for. And again, the data, and one of the benefits of Caladrius Network's activities already is various PhD types have popped up from the wine industry, from the commercial agricultural oil industry, from this circle of people right here, folk who are pioneers in this work with cannabis. We really need to, I would like to see us start sharing the information and the technology in the way that we've all done, but start concretizing that data so that we could all look at it and know that again, to just speak of my situation, I'm not sure what all different environments y'all are dealing with, but in my situation, we have here on the west slope of the Sierras in California, the outdoor environment is the cultivars that I've worked with in my garden, some of them responded really well to this environment. Others, not so well. And what I found is by chasing some of those that did well, I'm continuing to find various expressions of that are doing even better than that original plant did. And meantime, new things are popping up in test results. And so I want to share that data with any of you that are interested in it. I've got a book of test results, and I'm told that we can send them in email form to other folk. So again, I'm not very tech savvy, but I know people who are that will help me. And I imagine all y'all know this because you're doing this. But seriously, that kind of data about how the various cultivars express in different environments and how the cultivars benefit specific patients with specific conditions. And ideally, someday we could even add in what is it about those patients, because like to go back to Forrest and Silas and Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. I have a patient in my patient group, Cam, who I don't have pictures of or any of that, but he's a 28-year-old young man now. When he was born, his mother had he and his mother suffered through an in utero virus infection that had resulted him being born profoundly disabled and was given an estimated 2-year lifespan at birth. Well, meantime, he's made it to 28 years old. And I first met him because he was on, I think they said 15 different pharmaceutical medications trying to control seizures and was basically dying. And they'd been told cannabis might help him. Anyway,
let's get him.
Cam is a story that actually right now has a good outcome. I've known him 4 years now, and have been able to, a plant called Remedy, actually. His parents make an oil using ultrasound in mid-chain triglyceride with a small centrifuge, and they give it to him in a feeding tube. And he's gone from being fully withdrawn and nonverbal and non-responsive to actually trying to push himself up out of the wheelchair to help his mother after he's told her he needs to go to the bathroom. That's all happened in the last year. So there's a story where cannabis is helping, and we've been able to find a cultivar that's benefiting at least one patient. I'm not confident that that benefit will continue. I have fear that he may get acclimated to it. I don't, there's no data. Again, I come back to the data thing. So if you have access to that kind of information, if you could start putting it together in a way that it could be shared, there are doctors who would love to look at this data. And like I said, the Caladrius Network is already, we've had folks step forward to say they'd assist us in gathering and putting the data together in a form that was accessible to us to be used in this way.
As a retired osteopath, I can tell you that these guys will only look at these data sets if it's a competent relational database that assures them that what they're looking at is backed up by proper research so they could do something with it.
Right.
And so the idea of this relational database has been on my mind for a number of years now. And I hope to make it almost like a spreadsheet so they can look at it and decide, here's symptom, here's beneficial terpenes, here's oil that are potentiated by the terpene, here's terpene mixes. That's what I want to do. And I'm going to, I'm 71. I don't know how much longer I'm going to live, but I'm going to spend the next year or two working this out. And if the good Lord decides that I can stay here and continue to do work, I'll be here. Otherwise, I'll terpene out someday. But hopefully by then, I will have left enough information behind so that people will be able to pick it up and say, hey, here's a good starting point.
Yes.
That's about all you can hope for. I'd love to see your kids. I mean, look, I was a combat field medic in Vietnam. I came back. I've went through every kind of medical training. I've studied with Chinese doctors. I've studied with the, as far down the ladder as a huesero in Mexico. I've studied with Chinese, everything, with Thai, with Vietnamese, all of it, because everybody has their own hit on it. And when you start to synthesize all these things, like for instance, Mark was here and I restored his breath. You can ask him how he felt afterwards. And it was not a medical treatment per se, but it made a big difference to Mark, didn't it, Mark?
Yep.
Well, that's therapeutic, though, and beneficial.
Well, it is, but everything is therapeutic. Everything we eat, the food is medicine. So
boom.
The idea that they want to separate us off from some plants as not being good for us just blows my mind. It's all food. It was all here from the beginning. You guys might have been here first and you made that rule, but so what? Screw that rule. It turns out it doesn't apply anymore to us. And we don't want to be held to the same rules that these old people who are scared to death of pot and scared to death of these kinds of things because they don't understand. And what people don't understand, they fear. And so the whole reason I'm attempting to do this research this year is to alleviate fear of using this out of people's minds and open them up to the fact that this has been here for a long time for us. Look, our bodies are full of it. Cows eat it and they feel better. My God, what more information do you need? So it's obviously not about any of that. It's only about control. And we got to remove this from the political arena. It's just like politicians trying to regulate medicine and say what doctors can and cannot do. It's all bullshit. You're the doctor. You're in charge of everything. They should be telling you not to take medicine. If that medicine works for you, man, that is your medicine. You know, it's just that's the way things are. And by the way, I did see that silly ass Doctor Strange movie. Had nothing to do with what I described here, but yeah. Anyway, put that aside. I really believe that we have a chance to go somewhere with this, and we got to climb out of the rut of having their thumb on us about all of it. I don't want to see a machine come along that does all that. I guess it's going to happen someday, but I would rather see people open their minds and hearts up and start, just like that little girl you said, who walked in and took a look at that plant and said, "This is my plant, and that's my mom's plant." We all have that inside of us. But they're going to force us to research anyway. So I'm going to give in and do it this year, next year, and the year after, if I have to come up with the truth, because I'm sick and tired of the BS and speculation. And those guys are the real speculators. They're going, well, just like on TV the other day, say, opioids and marijuana are really bad. One leads to the other. And I wanted to get on TV and slap him because that kind of information, there's a bunch of people sitting out there going, I knew it. Opioids and marijuana, bad news. And we got a lot of people in this country who operate on that level. I saw it on TV. I believe it.
Yeah.
And hey, Mark, I want to say thanks. I'm going to bounce out, you guys. I hope you all have a great day. First, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, guys.
Really nice to have you both on today. I hope you come back on again, John, Mark.
Peace.
Peace. Todd. Thanks for showing up. Yeah, what a great day today. Good conversation had by all for sure. I'm definitely stoked to have had both you guys on. I would love to have you guys back again to continue the conversation.
Would do.
Absolutely. Hopefully Tony will come on. I know he was so excited to have you guys on. I thought he would make it on as well. But I don't know what happened to him today. I think he must have been up real late last night working hard, as Tony often does. But yeah, I think 3 hours is a solid church. Definitely I'm going to be posting all of the information in regards to the I don't want to mispronounce it again, so I will read it. The Caladrius Network. Yes, yeah. Caladriusnetwork.org. You guys can check them out. We're definitely going to figure something out. I'm going to contact Forrest via email and figure out how I can support it, whether through my brand or whether through bubble bags or whether through a variety of projects that I'm on right now. We're definitely always wanting to do just the good work. You know, when I first met Hillary Black and she started the BC Compassion Club,
Right.
that was really where I was able to start this sort of, you know, I don't even like to call it philanthropy. It's just being a good human, you know, called being a good human. And I don't have enough of it in my life anymore. So I really, the minute I heard you talk about it, I want to be a part of it for sure. So
wonderful.
yeah, thank you guys for coming in and doing the good work that you're doing. And obviously thank the whole panel, Mark and Todd and Indra and Johnny B and Skunkman Sam.
Could I speak up for a second?
Please do, absolutely.
houseofharlequin.org.
There it is. That's
houseofharlequin.org. And yeah, you can get the rest of the story about how I found Harlequin and why I got that name, and see some photos of the garden. And there's a couple of videos there. It's, like I said, I'm not very tech savvy, but it's a pretty good website. Check it out.
Yes, I'm going to
I'll
share
be back.
Yeah,
Thanks
absolutely.
for the invite.
Absolutely. You guys definitely have a standing invitation. I'll make sure we get you guys the link again. And houseofharlequin.org, as well as the Caladrius Network.org. I'm going to do some research on that. What is that, like a myth from which?
It's Roman mythology.
It is Roman mythology. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was Greek.
And the trick with pronouncing it is in Latin, they pronounce every syllable. So if you look at it as Caladrius Network.
Caladrius.
Learn something new every day.
Cheers.
There it is. Awesome, everyone. And hey, thank you for watching Hash Church. All of you guys out there in the world watching right now. We had just over 800 people watching live originally. And yeah, I'm sure 10,000 plus people are going to watch this episode and be touched. And hopefully you will do your part and donate and support the great work that these guys are doing. We will see you all next week on Hash Church episode 129. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Peace out.
Peace.
Peace.
Nice meeting you guys, by the way.